and nothing ever really came of it. Yeah, he was saying that this guy picked the BMW car that he drove specifically because he thought women would be with him if he drove that car. He wore very expensive sunglasses, very expensive clothes because he thought that women would be with him for that. And this doctor's observation was that his narcissism was born out of his inability to see that other people wanted different things to him and experienced the world in a different way. And yeah, I just thought it was a very good observation.
Is that what all narcissists suffer from?
I'm not too sure if it's all narcissists, but this doctor was saying that that his narcissism seemed to stem from he thought he was great because he did all the things that he thought would make people great.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
A common thing that I've seen, and I wouldn't say I've known any like flat out narcissists, but I've known people that I think, at least in my opinion, would have had like kind of narcissistic tendencies sometimes. Not very nice people. And like the thing I always noticed with people who are like that is they tend to see large parts of the world, and especially with their interactions with people, as zero sum. They have this idea that the way to get what you want is to in some way compete so that somebody else can't get what they want. That the only way to get what you want will inevitably involve stopping somebody else from doing something that they would like to do. You know?
Yeah. So I see what you mean there. They're very take. Give, all take.
Yeah, like it makes a lot of sense. Like if you did see the world that way, if you thought that the only way for you to win was for others to lose, then you are going to be very selfish. You are going to be very focused on yourself. You're not going to pay much attention or put any kind of emotional effort into other people. You know, because you're going to see every single benefit of theirs as a loss to you.
Yeah. I mean, like one incident this guy brought up with Elliot Rodgers years before he went on his killing spree was that he got into a fight at a party because some girl liked another guy. And he was like, no, I'm great. I drove a BMW. And he got into a fight over it. And it's like, nobody wanted to be around this guy because he was nuts. And, everyone's like, okay, we don't want to be around you. You're crazy. Like, and he never took that as a hint that maybe there's something wrong with him. Not, it's the women picking other guys. That's what's wrong. The women are wrong. And it's like, no, they want to be with guys that they like, that are good for them, that they can like have a decent two-way relationship with. I mean, Elliot Rodgers was just one of these people that he thought that simply having good sunglasses made him attractive. That was it. Not
expensive sunglasses.
Yeah, like not like, oh, I'd like to spend time with this girl and we can go and do things together and holiday. No, nothing. Just this is what I want. The person's completely interchangeable. And the fact that I don't get it, it's their fault. And well, it didn't end so well.
Yo, Andrew with the braids.
Andrew,
what's up, guys?
Hey,
how you doing?
Howdy.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. How are you guys? It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, my daughter's birthday was a couple weeks ago, and then Valentine's Day was last week, and planned this whole breakfast, but we slept in, and so everything just didn't go as planned. But yeah, nice to be back though. It's nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, cool. Well, nice to see you again. Sometimes when things don't go to plan, you end up with the best results.
Yeah.
Sort of spontaneity.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You guys already started?
Nah, just we're warming up. We talked about an incel video George sent me. Just talking about incels for a little bit and kind of like how they came about and their narcissism.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have much of a strong opinion on incels. It's not really something I've looked too much into.
I think there's a whole range, right? There's a whole range from the overly nerdy to the absolutely narcissistic. Because being too agreeable and being too irritable, that's not attractive to women, at least. So you've got your whole spectrum of guys who, they're just such a good friend, to the ones that it's like, holy shit, we don't even want to be in the same room as.
Okay. And what's the history behind incels? Like, how did that even come about?
Well, I think there's always been a history of men who've been involuntarily celibate. If you consider that we have twice as many female ancestors as male ancestors.
But I, from what I understand, it's become some sort of organized group at this point.
Yeah, like I think to be fair, I know what you're saying, like George. Like there's always been guys who have wanted to have a sexual partner and just they didn't have one. But like as in, I think that the political identity or the political group of incels, or maybe it's an imaginary political group, I don't know. That seems to be describing like not necessarily the guys that are just single at the moment, you know, and aren't having any sex because of it. I think it's more just describing kind of these guys that are, I guess, get really resentful and bitter about it and are maybe like mean to women on Twitter and on online circles and stuff like that. Like I think it would be a bit unfair maybe to say that the guy who's just single for the last 2 years is an incel in the way that it gets given out about online, you know. I know what you mean though. Like, how did is it mainly an online thing?
I know
This movement crack. Is it MGTOW? Is it all of that, or
there's definitely a big, let's say, online community of incels.
Yeah.
I got introduced. I don't know if you're familiar with ContraPoints.
Yeah, she's fun as hell.
Yeah, if I say this right, if you're not aware, it's like a trans woman who, you know, making a lot of YouTube videos for entertainment, and she tackles some heavier topics, just broadly speaking. I don't know a lot about it, but a friend shared a video from her about incels. And apparently there's like forums, and there's really self-deprecating humor, where I don't want to generalize too much, but let's say maybe extreme incels, they make each other feel bad as well. And this is where Danny was talking about, they start to resent women and blame them. So there are men who are, let's say, been single for a long time, but then there's this other group where they just are going about it in an extreme way.
Yeah, it gets really twisted, really malignant.
Yeah, and they do a lot of self-deprecating humor, and there's like a lot of suicidal jokes, but that line is very gray, you know, before it stops being funny and starts becoming too real.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, online it's hard to tell what's a joke and what's serious. There's no tone in writing. So, and people write very badly online, I find. So it's very difficult to find exactly what they mean. Is this satire or is this serious? I see what you mean. I mean, in Japan, they've been saying for a long time that there's more and more, they call them grass eaters in Japan. They sort of categorize men by diet. So like a meat eater is like a big, strong guy, loads of women. Omnivore is like a businessman that's quite successful. Grass eater are the sort of guys who check out and live in their mum's apartment, and there's a big cultural thing in Japan where they don't even go out. They don't work. And this is sort of the same thing. I don't know if it's true that there are more men that are unsuccessful with women now than 20 years ago. But people seem to all have the idea that's true. I don't know if there's data to prove that, or
I know
that's getting married.
I know there is a trend in Japan where, let's say, there's a lack of romance. Couples they're not allowed to like married couples, and there's a population concern that's emerging. Yeah.
With when healthcare and like when the infant mortality rate gets down to next to zero, people have a lot less children. Is in areas in the world where there's having 5-6 children is normal. Well, there's 5-6 kids that live. The infant mortality rate, the lower the infant mortality rate, the less children people tend to have. The more people the more they have to invest in those children. So they're more likely to be to become grandparents in America having 2 kids than in Iraq having 6. So that's sort of that's another thing that's been going on for a long time. I mean, the birth rate in France is something like 1.3 children per woman, or something like that. Some ridiculously low number that barely keeps the population sustained. And but yeah, I don't know if I know that there's less people getting married, and that's a very easy statistic to see. You just divide the number of marriages by the population. But I don't know if that's less men being successful with women.
Another question, I was just wondering what everyone else thought about it, because we were talking about incels. When it comes to, let's say, the violence aspect, or when it comes to like mass shootings and stuff, I was looking on Google just very briefly. There are black mass shooters, that does exist, but it's nowhere near as high as stereotypically white mass shooters, relating to like their incel behavior and narcissism. And I was wondering, I don't know what you guys thought about that. Is there something culturally with black people that, because you would think stereotypically people who feel oppressed or having a hard time, there would be a lot more black children doing mass shootings.
Well, instead. the sorry to jump in first, but the crime rate is best predicted by the Gini index, which isn't your standing in society. What it is you take a geographical location, and then you look at the income distribution across that geographical area. The wider that income distribution is, the more violent that area is. So, for example, in places in Detroit and whatnot that have very poor standard of living, if they're removed geographically from people like in New York who have a very high standard of living, the violence isn't going to be anywhere near as high as somewhere like Bombay, where there's billionaires who are surrounded by people who are homeless. And somewhere like in Mumbai, Bombay, even Hong Kong, places like that, there's a very, very high crime rate.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. My the college that I went to our neighborhood was just like that. There was one side of the college was dirt poor, and the other side was filthy rich, and it was just, and the crime in the area was awful, and they had a lot of hard time dealing with it. And it was like, but it's like you just said. I mean, it was night and day, and they were not far apart. So
yeah, well, and that, again, it's like you can see the riches that you could have, but there isn't a legal way of getting them. So fuck it,
right.
And that's the thing. Whereas,
are you saying that the most of the crime in those areas where there's geographically concentrated income inequality is most of the crime theft?
It could be violent crime too.
Yeah, but is it violent crime with the intention? Like, because if it's about income, do you know what I mean? A prevalence of income inequality doesn't explain why people would stab each other. It definitely explains why I'd put a knife to your throat to rob the rich woman's purse.
Yeah, it can also be. It's also gang violence too. So a syndicate crime. So if you
need high income inequality
well,
gang violence.
if you are very poor in that area and you can get your hands on cocaine, you can sell that up the market very, very close by. Well, again, one of the problems is that, well, it's very expensive to get hold of, and then it's expensive to sell, it's risky, and you need a supply chain. So you end up with crime syndicates that don't only use theft to get the means, they use violent crime to establish their territory. So yeah, you end up with crime syndicates for drugs, guns, pretty much anything that's contraband. You'll end up with a crime syndicate over that as well. And if you are on the poorer side, you can use violent crime to make yourself at the higher up in the lower hierarchy. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I can see stuff like that. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, I can see something like that.
I would say that I can see how I guess people go down certain paths just based on resentment. I mean, that seems to be a common I don't know thing that these two groups that we're talking about hold. So, George, you were talking about how incels are rather narcissistic, right? And so, I mean, if that's some sort of commonality within the group, I mean, when you're sitting here and you become resentful, and you don't really have anyone else to blame in your mind except for, say, the woman, right? I feel like it's easy to kind of spiral down that hole. So, and then, I mean, with regard to like gangs and whatnot, and perhaps poor people next to rich people, of course you're going to become resentful of the shit that you can't get. Right? I mean, I guess.
And don't forget, rich people can treat poor people very badly.
Oh yeah. So you become resentful of people as well. I mean,
right.
So
there's a lot of dynamics that go on. I think one answer. I mean, nearly all serial killers are white men. Nearly all of them. I think one of the answers to Frank's initial question there is, I think that white people in America live in a far bigger hierarchy than black people geographically, because there are black areas in America and they're generally not very well off. But say in New York or other places in America, San Francisco, white people are making up way worse off conditions and billionaires. So the areas where white people tend to live have higher income distribution. So if you took the average or the mean, yeah, sure, they're better off. But there are a lot more people who are far worse off. And then you've got billionaires and not just billionaires and millionaires, but you've got like the middle class who are really dragging that average up. So I think in America, you've got a lot of white people who are in terrible conditions, and a lot of white people who are in very, very good conditions. And the difference is that areas just tend to be pretty bad. They don't tend to have major. Like Silicon Valley.
That's really interesting. I like that thought process. So it's something like, just loosely speaking, when you have like poor white people like in New York, in the midst of their environment among really rich white people, it's like they have an average of more resentment as opposed to, let's say, like black people in the ghetto. They kind of hesitant to say that they're more accustomed to it, so there's less resentment. They kind of accept it more. As opposed to like a white person's like, man, I deserve this. Why don't I have this? And that extra resentment manifests itself that way.
It might be a little bit more geographically removed from it. So the actual, who are they going to go and shoot up? People who are in the same
more broad thing to play. I feel like minorities in particular communities, like black people, say Mexicans and all those who are in like these kind of really shitty ass places, like ghetto places, right? I think that they have something more broad to blame it on, which they could just say, well, fuck the system. You know, the man's just trying to keep me down. Whereas, you know, like you guys are saying, the white people may be closer to the actual people that they can see maybe a link to. And maybe, you know, I don't know, they extrapolate from that. Like, this motherfucker has all this money and it's coming. Maybe they think that it's coming like out of my pocket. Maybe they have like a more direct target.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think I don't know if I would say that the motivation by a lot of just like average criminals in high crime neighborhoods is like kind of like resentment and like bitterness and stuff like that. I mean, I think it's like more of a mix of just some really bad morals being prevalent in those kinds of smaller subcultures, and then the lack of resources that, you know, so they don't have the means to get what they want in life, and so they resort to these what we would say immoral means to get what they want. And in these kinds of subcultures, these immoral means are, I won't say they're tolerated, you know, but like there's a lot more accepted, you know, whereas the mass murderer who shoots up a school or a serial killer that, you know, rapes and murders a dozen women, like that's a completely different kind of motivation. The psychology of that guy is totally different. Like, I don't think, and this might be a rather weird way of putting it, I don't think if your problems in life are, you know, that you're in this shithole neighborhood, like with lots of crime and drugs, and, you know, you're kind of, you can't find a job, and, you know, you're struggling to pay your bills and stuff like that. Like, that can produce a certain kind of criminal mindset if you're so inclined and if you're around people. But the guy who decides that he wants to rape and murder women is that's a totally different thing. Like, and I ironically, I think that something like that might well be more likely if your basic needs are met. You know, so if you're not going hungry and if you are being able to pay your bills, I can imagine there being other life factors, like, so your wife, you know, your marriage falling apart, and your wife and you have, you know, mistreating each other terribly and stuff like that. I can imagine once your basic needs are met, other kinds of things affecting your psychology to turn you into some kind of a nut job. You know, so it's not just that you've got bad morals; you're actually kind of insane. You know.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. You're you know, there's people who steal food because they're hungry, which is a primal urge that you have to satiate every 12 hours. And then you know, once you've got a comfortable life, well, it's like, well, you know, then you move up the
But even the guys who just like sell like low level drugs to just get by, you know, they're not necessarily, you know, like stealing the food because they're starving or whatever, but they're still kind of engaging in low level criminal activity that they're willing to kind of morally tolerate and is morally tolerated within the community because they see it as the most available or easiest way to get some of their basic needs, you know.
And that's what I wanted to differentiate. It's in those extreme violent cases, let's say like a serial rapist maybe, but the mass shooters, I wanted to kind of hone in on why is the stereotype that they're usually white. And
I'd say it's because of the fact that, like, a lot of, at least in America, you know, again, actually, do you know what? Actually, you know what? I don't know this. I actually don't know the economic background of these serial killers. So, you know what? I'm not even going to finish that thought because
the interesting thing with serial killers is that from what I have read, the overwhelming majority of them are white. Statistically speaking, they are.
And just to be more specific, like just to be more specific, the mass shooters, not just people who travel across state lines or country lines to serial kill, but the mass shooters, the ones who kind of implode.
Yeah, again, the overwhelming statistics are that nearly all of them are white. Not all of them, but nearly all of them. And that might just be the reason there's that stereotype. The economic backgrounds of certain serial killers doesn't tend to be very good. They don't end up. They're not usually from. They're usually from broken homes. There's the McDonald triad, which is bedwetting, cruelty to animals, and arson. Nearly all serial killers followed that triad as children. There was a case just outside Manchester, England, where some very long time ago, somebody went and shot up a school. I think he was in his 30s. He was from a pretty well-off family, but he worked with children, and he was a pedophile. Which, when this became known, he had a ego the size of a planet. He was a total narcissist. I mean, he wrote this to the Queen of England demanding that rumors be stopped. That's how nuts this guy was. And when the school found out that he was a pedophile, fired him from his job working with children, he went and shut up the school because how dare they? I'm so brilliant. They are spreading rumors. That's their fault. Not the fact that he's a pedophile. That never occurred to him. I mean, a lot of these, like Dr. Stone's program, Most Evil, is quite interesting. It looks at the background of a lot of different serial killers. They tend to come from broken homes and have had hardships, which are not terribly unusual, but in areas where it's like there are people also living the really good life. So I think, again, there's a lot of factors that go into making a mass murderer or a serial killer.
Yeah. Like the narcissist thing, like as in, well, like I was saying before, like I think Andrew and Eric joined, like it makes sense because narcissists, if they view the world in this kind of zero-sum way, they think that the way for them to win is to that in order for them to win, somebody else has to lose something, right? The thing about that is that it goes both ways. It means that they interpret every loss of their own as being caused by somebody else's win. So when something bad happens to them or something that they don't like somebody spreading rumors or something like that, they interpret that as people being out to get them, people being out so somebody else is benefiting from their pain. And you don't have to be a narcissist to know how that feels. If something bad happens to you, that makes you feel like shit, right? But if it's ever happened to you where something bad is happening and you think that somebody else is making that bad thing happen so that they can feel good in some way or so that they can benefit you, that makes you really angry, man. Like that makes you really resentful. You hate that person for doing that to you. You're like, what's your problem? So like if you see the whole world like that, if you see every interaction with people as being this competition of winners and losers, like it's no wonder that these guys get so fucking angry and get so like hateful of everyone and paranoid and it's paranoia is so common with them. It's
that's pretty much, you described the guy I was reading about who shut up the school in Manchester. You described him to a T. It's sadly predictable.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that if in a very strange way, it's like, well, if you saw the world that way, all of that makes total sense. Like that's the thing that's kind of sad. It makes you kind of sympathetic. It's just like these guys are just making a mistake. They have a mistaken way of viewing the world, and it's rotted everything from there.
I don't know if one of you have already said it, but it's like it's like they're doing it to themselves.
Yeah.
It's like this. I mean, that's what's sad about it. It's like it's this behavior is certainly not making the very thing they're complaining about any better. It's no one's going to be attracted to that attitude, in my opinion. But
Peterson makes a point like that. Like that. It's there are certain kinds of ideas like that where he's based. I think he says something like, "You go ahead and you act that out." and he said something like,
See how it works for you.
Was it Young said something like, it's always possible for there to be a lower level of hell, and people can put themselves there, you know. In fact, it's often only you that can do that to yourself, you know.
Right.
Right.
Well, I don't really, when I think about I would say the connections of like race and mass shootings, you know, whereas it's more common with white people versus like black people or any other minority. I've been trying to kind of make connections in my head, but I don't feel like I've been successful at all. I mean, I've been thinking about a lot about how somebody can get to a particular point. So say incels in specific, right? How they kind of, like I said, they come down this this hole of resentment, right? And I thought about, because I watched a something that Jordan did on mass shooters, and how he says, you know, if you just read their writings, you can see why they did it. Everyone's asking why. Well, read what they said, and you'll figure it out. He's like, they become resentful, they become nihilistic, and they think that the human race, you know, just is despicable, right? Because, you know, one of the points that they seem to make, it seems to be kind of congruent amongst these community of mass shooters, is that the human race is capable of so much destruction and tyranny, and we create it. And so I think the problem is that they only see that side. They think that humans are only capable of putting evil out into the world, and then you could see how, if you keep spiraling down that hole, well, what conclusion do you eventually come from? All humans are terrible, evil, they don't deserve to live. And so these kids in this school are just going to grow up to become terrible, evil monsters and inflict pain upon the world. So why don't I just go ahead and, you know, do something here, right? I mean,
Yeah, like as in the way that I think about stuff like this, and I actually love listening to Jordan talk about stuff like those guys. I think that's him at his best. You know, he's amazing when he's just riffing for 20 minutes on fucked up people. But like, I think of life as just being full of problems, and when somebody is depressed, that's because they're chronically failing to solve various problems in their life. And then when they're suicidal, it's not just that they're failing to solve problems, it's that they actually feel kind of hopeless that their problems even are solvable, you know, and that hopelessness makes them want to give up. And then what you're talking about, Andrew, is like another little like kind of twist on the end of that, where it's not just that they think that their problems aren't solvable, it's they think their problems aren't solvable because somebody or something is making it unsolvable for them. You know, so there's people in their life that they blame for their problems, and they blame them not just for the problems, but for their inability to fix them, to get past them, or they blame multiple people, or as Jordan says, those guys have taken it to the extreme where they're not even focused on other individual people now. They think there's something in general about the world that is just out to stop them from making their life any better. And they just fucking hate it. And you would, again, this is the sad thing. It's like,
right.
if you did think all of that, you would hate the world. You would want to.
That thought process is completely sequential. I mean, if you're sitting there thinking that, you know, there are people out there to get you, and then you come to the conclusion that it's the human race that's just bad, you can see, you know, how they end up in particular places. I mean, that's why I really like his message of you know, take as much responsibility for things as you can, blame yourself as much as you can, because when you start to do that, you start to realize you are the cause of a lot more of your problems than you initially thought. And I would say a lot more things start to get solved when you become more honest with yourself about that. Again, I think this is something that, you know, it's a similarity that these people kind of share. I mean, look at incels. I mean, whose fault is it that women don't want to fuck me, right? It's not my fault. I mean, I'm just great. So, you know, they're all terrible.
Yeah, bunch of bitches, like, you know, that's what it is. It's like,
exactly, right? And so I mean, you can see why they become so resentful toward women, right? Because, well, you're not blaming yourself. You couldn't blame yourself. You're the greatest person on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ego the size of a planet is not exactly an attractive trait in anybody. But I mean, like, to your point about depression, it's like my father suffers with depression a lot, and looking back, it's like you can see how the error, the computer error in the brain, in my dad's brain. Something happens, and his solution is to make it worse, and it's not intentional, but that's what depressed people do, and it's really sad to see someone, who is intelligent like my dad, who suffers with depression. When he's depressed, it's really difficult to be around because it's such an error message in the brain. And like I absolutely forced him to go to a doctor once to get antidepressants, and that helped a little bit. And I'm like, no, that's still not solved completely. And he had his experience of it was, well, they make no difference. And it's like, yes, but everybody around you can now be in the same room as you and not want to kill you. So it's really sad, because it's like when he's not depressed, when he's free from it, he's a great guy to be around. He can be great fun to be around and quite intelligent. But when he's suffering with depression, it's like all the tricks his brain is pulling on him, that just brings him down such a and then of course, like, alcohol added to that, like he likes wine. It's like when he's not depressed, a glass of wine is fine, he can stop there and he's a bit of a laugh. When he is depressed, it doesn't happen like that. He gets very, very angry, gets very, very upset. Every little thing ruins his day. And it's so hard to be around someone like that. And unfortunately, like, very often it's like, well, my day is so bad, I'm going to make everybody else's day bad. Yeah. I know that's not what he's thinking, but that's what he's doing. And
no, go ahead, George. Sorry.
Oh yeah, honestly, like, I know my father's considered suicide a lot. He was a soldier. He had PTSD. I think the best therapy has been his cat. His cat has helped him a lot with. Now he doesn't wake up shouting like when I was a kid. If you woke him up, he'd wake up in absolute fight mode. But with the cat, no, he's got a couple cats, the dog, the animals really help him. But they don't solve the depression part of it, which is like, it's so hard to describe, because it becomes so much of their personality that it takes over for a few months, and then they might come out of it. If things happen to go well, then they can start snapping out of it and becoming themselves again. But for my dad, it's like something bad happens, one little bad thing happens, ruin the rest of his day. And so it's like
there's a phrase that there seems to be a kind of like spiraling aspect to those kinds of thoughts. And so there's this person I've met, I've spoken to her a couple of times. Her name is Luli Tanit, and she has this theory. So she originally came up with this idea because she was thinking about why conversations can get so nasty sometimes. But so this is relevant, I promise. Just bear with me a minute. What she noticed is that if you're having a conversation with somebody, like even if it's, let's say, your spouse or something, and you're disagreeing about something, I don't know, like fucking doing the dishes or whatever it is, or there's some topic, and you're arguing about it, and that's fine. But the minute one of you, and the way she puts it is, she says, the minute one of you makes a kind of meta comment. So what she means is, if I notice that my girlfriend is really sensitive about this issue, if instead of talking about the issue, if I say, you're really sensitive about this, so I've gone more meta in the conversation. So I have now brought up a discussion point about the way she discusses this, right? What that actually does, the thing about a kind of meta comment like that is that it breeds more meta, because what my girlfriend is likely to say if I point out that she's sensitive about this issue is she is likely to go, yeah, well, I may be sensitive about this, but you're sensitive about other things and you don't see me bringing that up. So it's like, I've gone up one level of meta because I'm talking about the way she discusses this issue, and now she's on another level of meta. She wants to discuss the way I have brought up her discussing this issue. You know, so and the point is that this kind of meta comment kind of folds back in on itself and makes more and more meta, right? Luli's theory is that a lot of kind of depression and anxiety and the thoughts involved are meta thoughts. But it's like you're having this kind of meta conversation with yourself. And so you're making these kinds of comments to you within your own mind, and it's breeding more and more meta in your own mind, and you get stuck in the same way that because the thing to notice is that in conversation with your spouse or your partner or something where you bring up something like them being sensitive, those are the conversations that go south really fast, and they get really nasty and really mean. And like, imagine having that same conversation with yourself, and imagine being nasty and mean to yourself. And it's like, she's like, that's her theory anyway. I'm not 100% sure what I think about it, but I think there's definitely something to this idea that there's a kind of thought that encourages thoughts to kind of fold in on themselves, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, I would say my dad thinks more like that outwardly about the world when he's depressed. When he's depressed, he feels guilty over everything. It's like if you say, "Oh, this is," well, it's like you said that he ruined your day or he did this thing to you. And it's like, no, it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah,
it can't have nothing to do with me. And it's like, it has nothing to do with you, you know. And it's very difficult if you've had a bad day at work or wherever. You can't pretend that, oh no, everything's fine. You know, that's just people just don't act like that. But people who are depressed, and especially my father, think that that's an attack on them.
Yeah,
they feel guilty about it. Whether you've said, you know, like, you're the reason I'm doing this stupid job or not, and it's very difficult to deal with because it's like, I mean, my father takes way more offense than is sent.
Yeah. Like what you notice is like it's this tendency. Like, I'm not talking about your father specifically, obviously, because I haven't met him or whatever, so I don't want to make any remarks about him. But like, as in generally speaking, it's like that kind of thing where the person kind of it's what they're doing is that they're making it more meta. They rather than, they're not concerned about the issue or whatever it is that made you have a bad day. They immediately jump to this idea that, well, maybe I'm doing something that is making you have a worse day than you otherwise would have. It's like this, they're taking the conversation up a level, you know, without any need.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that model fitting certain aspects of dealing with people who are depressed.
And something else, like with this kind of language, or specifically the self-deprecating, whether it's like incels or depression, suicidal. What's most harmful is that there is a lot of truth to that. They're not just, it's not completely delusional. What they're doing also is they're finding darker and darker truths. And it's kind of like what Andrew was saying a little bit. And this is something that I like that Jordan Peterson brings up. Something along the lines of, it's not good to tell people, or be careful when you tell people, hey, you're okay the way you are. Because they know, like, when they contend with the reality, it's like, I know I'm not that good because I look at my social circles, my work life. Obviously, something's not right. So it's like, you need to provide the balance. Like, yes, there's a dark truth, but then acknowledge the problem, but provide a solution or show that hope. But here's a way out, and it's kind of ties into something we talked about last week. You know, there's many ways that can help people, like audiobooks, YouTube, so on and so forth. But I think one of the best ways is by example. Is if you can see like a friend was depressed and all of a sudden like their life is getting better, you're gonna wanna know what's going on. And this kind of ties in with communities. It's like these incels or these people, for lack of better words, they don't have these positive role models. They don't have these models or a map to show them how to get out of this problem. And it's that lack that. So all they're left with is the despair. They don't see the way out.
Yeah, and when you get into a positive feedback loop and you can't stop it, what else does it have to do except for expand? It's just going to expand its grasp. And that's true. I mean, it's really easy to delve into the game of nihilism. I mean, if you think about it, like Frank was saying, there's a lot of truth to things. Oh yeah, humans are pretty terrible. And that's to each other and other species. We are the most destructive species probably on the planet. I mean, we, destroy the environment. I feel like we cause just the most harm in the cycle of life in nature. But I mean, the thing is, I mean, going down that hole in nihilism, like I said, it makes a lot of sense because there's a ton of truth to it. But at the same time, we are capable of really great altruistic things, and we do them. That's the thing. I mean, what other species goes and helps other species out, just to be altruistic or just, because they truly do care about that species? I don't think that other animal species have the capabilities or, the empathy to do such a thing, whereas we do, and we can take advantage of that, and we can put more good out into the world. So it's easy when all you're seeing is the negative to be stuck in the negative versus, I think that realistic people can understand that, yes, we truly are and can be destructive, but we can be the greatest for the best reasons out of any other species as well. So,
Like, I think so to say something to what Frank was saying there was about when Jordan says, you need to be careful when you say to somebody like you're good the way you are. Or it's like, I think that, okay, in 2020, in kind of mainstream culture, that kind of statement is offered up in a way that is kind of dangerous. It's offered up as there's nothing wrong with you. You are not at all involved in the cause of any of your problems or whatever it is. So you're good the way you are. It's just everything else that needs to get its act together, and like, so in that sense, yeah, telling somebody, there's nothing wrong with you, or sorry, that you're good the way you are, that's terrible advice.
And just really quick, the way you said that line of dialogue, so similar to what incels say. Oh, I'm good just the way I am.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, but there is a way you can offer it where if you just mean like, look, you are like everybody is like good the way they are, but so long as they don't think that they're a finished product, that you are a good the way you are, but you have lots of problems in life. You always will. You can always improve. You can make your life infinitely better if you just put in the fucking effort, and do and try and pursue that. So in that sense, I don't think there's anything wrong if that's what you mean in saying like you're good the way you are. Now, obviously, you wouldn't say that to a serial killer. Like that person has, okay, I don't know if it's appropriate to say that there, but then something to what you said, Andrew, about the like, I don't know how, I don't want to like nitpick or whatever, but like, I think maybe I think it's a bit far to say that there's truth in like the stuff that like nihilists and stuff say or whatever. Like, I think if someone thinks that stuff, then yeah, nihilism makes sense. But I don't think there's a whole lot of truth to the idea that like people are just fucking terrible. Like people can be dangerous and people can do bad things. But like, I don't think there's anything like inherently awful people, you know. Like, I think people are fucking awesome, man. That's the way I look at it, you know. But we are obviously, like, people are the most dangerous things on the planet at the same time. You know,
That's what I believe.
Both, yeah, I think they can be
Both
awesome and super dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I believe. And that's the thing. That's where I think nihilists kind of take it, is they don't see the super awesome part. They see the fact that we can and are dangerous. And take it to the extreme, and it's reasonable to get to that extreme if you don't see the other side.
Yeah.
If you've only ever been bullied and you've never enjoyed humor, you've been the victim of it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, humor is a great thing. It can really upset people. So, you know, if your experience of life is you've been on the receiving end of it, then you're probably going to be more nihilistic than if you've actually got friends and enjoy yourself and have had a good experience. Just I know this is a slightly bit off topic, but to steelman the incel position, I do find women are more, not every single woman, but I do find women have a lot more in common than men have in common. So women very often, you know, their desires, marriage, kids, that's a lot more common than, say, a fancy car or a fancy toy that guys have, right? So guys have more spread out interests, I find, than, well, women can be interested in a lot of things, but I find that nearly all women are interested in the family aspect as well.
Right. Well, Jordan Peterson always said that. He always says that women tend to be more interested in people and men tend to be more interested in things. You know, like it's I mean, of course, it's a generalization, but
yeah, I mean, like I've got female friends who are interested in everything from like kite surfing and flying airplanes, but it's like, you know, to them it's like, I want to be an airline pilot so that I can marry an airline pilot and have a family, and it's like, whereas for guys it's like, I just want to fly cool planes, you know, and but then other guys are like, oh, I want a boat, then it's completely different. And other guys are into science, and other guys are into much more varied interests, I find than women, just in general. Now, personally, I find that my interests in life have very, very little overlap with women's general interests, because I'm interested in race cars, airplanes, basically, yeah, anything mechanical. I'm not really interested in the family life.
Get away from things, like do more social, I would say.
Yeah, go to some tea party.
yeah, I know. I should definitely be more. Well, the thing is then flying airplanes, like there's a whole community of people around that. There's a whole community of people at the gliding club, a whole community of people at the kart track, you know, and you know, I have a lot of friends from all of these things. But, you know, my 5-year plan doesn't include marriage and kids, whereas by the age of 30, most women want to be settled down.
Well, I think so. That was going to be my point. I think that there might be, I don't think this is the whole story. I think a lot of this is maybe just down to the fact that women's timelines, at least at the moment with current technology and stuff, tend to funnel some of their interests to earlier stages in life. So, like I think if you ask the same question of men and women who are 25 and then men and women who are 35, I think you probably find a much greater proportion of men who are maybe more interested in families and marriage and stuff like that. I think it's just that some of that stuff kind of gets shunted forward for women, you know.
Yeah. And the other thing is the other major difference between men and women, I find, is that women after 26, men find them less attractive, and after 26, women find men more attractive. You know, like women, you know, if you're 32, got a good career, and you're single, you're not going to be single for very long. You're going to, some 26-year-old girl is
Yeah.
So like a lot of these mass shooters and these guys, incels who really hate women, they're just not attractive yet. I mean, it's just a you're 23.
No,
God, like the thing is, right, you're just not attractive yet. Like, you're 20, and
But-
you have.
You're right. He's
No,
right.
under the age of 26, we're not attractive yet.
But just to be
I
clear,
know,
though,
I know what he's saying, though. I know what he's
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. No, I'm not laughing because what you're saying is dumb. I'm just laughing because it sounds funny.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely
right.
comedic.
Kind of true, right?
But totally right. Though. I know what you mean.
You might be a good-looking guy for 23, but like, come on, you're still not finished uni. You don't have a fancy car. Like, your car is a banger if you're lucky to have it. Lucky enough to have a car, you probably still live with your parents. That's just no thanks, right? And it's like, who are the girls who are interested in you? They're 18. But about 5 years age difference is what women and men generally go for. Is about a 5 year age difference. They're 18. Well, their parents aren't going to let them date you. You're 23, like, yeah, you're 18, they're still in their home, they're still in high school. You're 23, you're going nowhere because like nothing's taken off yet, nothing's working. What parent is going to say, yeah, just invite him around, he's fine, I like this guy? Like, no. Like, and again, like, the difference is you're in college or university or at work, and they're in high school. Where are you going to meet them? Right? You're a creep if you're meeting 18, 17-year-old girls in your mid-20s, right?
Yeah, so just to be explicit, it's not necessarily the age thing for men. It's the level of competence and in life. And it's just, surprise, surprise, you're more competent and accomplished as you get older.
Yeah, like a lot of data does point to women date between 3 and 5 years older than them anyway, right? But like in high school, well, there's only 4 years of high school, and grade 12 dating a grade 9 is just wrong, right? So women generally quite like guys who are just a little bit older than them, and it's like, well, when you're 23, there's really no women available to you who are available, and you're not going to meet them anywhere because, well, in most countries, 18 or 19 is the drinking age. So it's like you're at the pub, they're not allowed to be at the pub. And so it's like when you're 23, when you're 30 and they're 25, well, then you're going to be meeting each other. So a lot of these incels, it's like, yeah, and the thing is they're throwing in the towel before they've even started work on their life, which is a terrible idea because it's like, all right, you can stay at home you just waste 5 years. Or however many years you just waste all that time, not improving your life at all. And then, yeah, you're in the same situation you were in years ago, which, again, so if life is a race, the guys who went to uni and, enjoyed it and they're way ahead of you. And women do tend to pick the winners, they don't tend to have much patience for guys who,
well, I think that's like I can maybe say broadly true. Like,
yeah, I'm not talking specifically,
but what counts as a winner, I suppose, really does like depend. I find it hard to, like, obviously it varies from like even country to country, state to state, neighborhood to neighborhood. Like.
Well, it has to vary because we're so varied in the reason why the term "I'm an alpha" that's just not true. Like the alpha beta male thing.
No, Andrew looks pretty fucking alpha, man. I'm not gonna lie.
The reason why that's technically not true. It's a zoological term, right? The alpha chimps can just scare away and beat away the smaller beta chimps, and
definitely do that to me.
Yeah, probably, probably me too. But the thing is female chimps go into ovulation, go into heat, and they will have sex with any chimp that can get hold of them. They will gladly have sex with any chimp that can get hold of them. Whereas, Andrew might be able to beat me up, but my girlfriend probably is going to run like hell. So humans don't have alphas and betas because, like, you might be a bodybuilder in the gym, but come to the airfield and I'll be your instructor in a glider. So this is why it's so complex, our society and our competencies. We've got so many available competencies that, you could take an astronaut, oh yeah, top guy in this, but you put him in a submarine, he's going to be an ensign instead of a captain.
No.
So that's why, and but yeah, I mean, the whole alpha beta thing, they're technically wrong, and
it's like if you're going to use them as like technical terms, but I think that, like, generally speaking, and I think it is true of men as well. It's just not like maybe as true, but like people don't want to go out with somebody that they think is a loser in some way. Now, most people don't view other people in such harsh terms, and the people who do are usually pretty mean. But like, guys are not going to go out with some girl that they think is, just not. It's just not that they're looking at them going like, you don't have a lot of stuff going for you, in my opinion. Like, a guy is not going to go out with a girl that they think that of, and it's the same with girls. Now, I think it might be. I think women get a little bit more leeway from men, mainly because men are more interested in. They put more weight in physical attraction than life accomplishment. Now, that's not to say that men don't care about life accomplishment. They absolutely do, especially in the year 2020. But I think, excuse me, I think. Yeah, like, I don't know. I'm often maybe like a little bit skeptical, like, to boiling down kind of like dating economies and dating markets to some stuff, like, especially when we start talking about like other animals and things, because I mean you can see, even just with the advent of online dating, like human dating and what the kind of people that different humans are interested in dating gets really it's really sensitive, and it's really like because all it took was for the dating to move primarily from bars and restaurants and friendships that you're, friend of a friend. All that had to happen was for that to get moved online, and suddenly like the dating behavior of lots of people just changes drastically. Like,
it's
so I totally look, a lot of the general patterns are pretty fucking clear. Like, when it comes, I wouldn't deny that men and women do behave differently when it comes to dating. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's I'd be very interested to see how dating markets change, as technology and dating moves into technology and stuff like that. I think it'd be really interesting to see.
I've been thinking for a while that, I mean, have anybody seen the movie The Social Network about Facebook? So basically the reason why Facebook hasn't touched dating yet is because the Winklevoss brothers, when it started, hired Zuckerberg to make them a dating website, and they sued because anyway. So basically their understanding is that Facebook doesn't touch dating for a hell of a long time, but Facebook has all the data that you would need to match people pretty successfully. Geography, personality, all of that stuff. They have enough data to actually start. If you'd sign up, they could actually just give you a list of people. All right, there's a list of people for you. I mean, I wonder how that would change things. I mean, people want to feel like they've made a choice, so you got to sort of give them the yes, no, but they know what you're going to pick. A couple points back, you were saying that no one's going to date a loser. Nobody wants to date someone they have sympathy for.
No,
that's not attractive. Like, having sympathy for someone. Oh, well, things have gone very badly for him. I feel sorry for him. She ain't going to date you. Having that sort of victim, like, nobody dates a victim. So, things went bad, but, rock on attitude. As long as people don't feel sorry for you, then yeah. But a lot of these incels do feel very sorry for themselves, and they're promoting anybody who gets out of that community is ostracized from that community. if they meet a girl and have a relationship, boom, they're the enemy. They weren't a real incel, right? So it's
isn't it ironic? Because you're right, but that seems to contradict, like, because it is in. So if an incel is just somebody who's involuntarily celibate, but a requirement for the community is that you voluntarily keep yourself celibate, it's like, isn't it amazing? The actual like reasons and explanations for why they're behaving the way they are betray the name. You know, it gives the game away.
Yeah, terribly celibate.
Yeah, this is like evidence of the denial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it really was just that these guys want to have sex but they just can't fucking manage it, you'd think they'd be fucking happy if one of them managed to.
What do you do?
Yeah, you know, but they're not, you know, because that's not really what's going on. Like, okay, unless there's something you guys want to say there on a point. I thought of a question there a few minutes ago, and I'm wondering what you guys might think, because it's about Jordan Peterson specifically. But if there's something else, if there's anything anybody else wants to say, or any other shit that people want to talk about, that's fine. I'll leave the floor to you.
So one topic I wanted to touch on before you change real quick, and I brought it up last week. Don't know if you guys saw the video, but it was like the direction of the group.
What? Sorry, one thing, Frank. I don't mean to interrupt. I was like skipping forward through bits in that video to see, because I wasn't sure. Is the audio a bit messed up, or was it just my device?
Oh, no, I couldn't hear George like at all.
Oh, damn! I need to double check this.
Yeah, it seemed like the audio was kind of messed up at various points. I couldn't hear people, and that, you know.
Yeah, it sounded like there was another conversation in the background, but you couldn't hear what we were saying.
Oh God! All right, okay. Then I don't know. I'll check that.
Go ahead, so Frank. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And this was last week's video.
This was number 7. Yeah. Also, great name, by the way. Incrementum class.
So I'll just try and be concise. Basically, it's like the direction of this group. Like, I thought now that everyone's kind of comfortable with each other, like, I like the vibe that we have. We're comfortable, but we're also comfortable enough to like press against each other to push back. And it just seems everyone's cool. We could be a little bit self-reflective and like, what are we doing here? On one hand, I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. Like, I did start this, and there's some things that I do try to lay the groundwork for, and just try and help with the conversations and direct them when necessary and all that. But this is definitely something that doesn't belong to me. If George wanted to be like, hey guys, I'm doing another group on YouTube, come listen to me over here, do it. You know, this isn't my idea or anything like that. This is just, to me, it was just people talking. But since then, you know, it's been brought up and there's been tips and ideas like where to go from here. Been uploading the videos on YouTube. I'm gonna keep doing that, keeping track. I do like the idea of putting it out there into the public and letting everyone else like benefiting from this, and that's something that George brought up as well, because we do have, I think so too, we have good conversations, and that will be, obviously that's beneficial because we see someone like Jordan Peterson, YouTube. I said this before, that there's different ways people can improve their life, and this is one medium, so I'm definitely not against that. But the primary thing for me is the community. Is something like that, is this group. For me, spectators are secondary. It's a great effect. It's a great symptom of this. But the primary objective is us. And I feel like if we're doing this right, it'll naturally attract people who want to listen and so on and so forth. So one thing I realized what this isn't is, like, where do I not want to go? Well, if this grows and we have like 50 people, we're not gonna have 50 people talking at once. something that's good is small groups. So if there were like 8 of us, I would divide it into 4 and 4. I think 4 is a good number because I think what's important also is engagement. It's good to hear, but it's good to contribute. And engagement is an idea that I think is really good for conversations. Sometimes like I remember like with Eric, he's like, "Hey guys, I'm busy, but I'll just listen in," and that's completely fine.
Yeah, I hope you guys don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't
no.
bother people, but
And that's
whatever's
cool.
fun for you, man. Whatever's fun for you.
Yeah. So it's that.
But I
So
also see where Frank's going with it too. So
fuck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he runs it, so
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's something else you wanted to say there, but it's like I don't know. I mean,
So what I want to say is like just 'cause I'm kind of giving a direction. So eventually, I would like more and more people to come. As more people come, I'm probably gonna find a program or write a code or something where we could divide it to different groups. So if there's 50 people, it'll automatically divide us. I'm not gonna talk about the process right now, but it's so we can encourage this engagement and communication, as opposed to just having, if there's 50 people, you don't want 4 people talking and the rest being spectators. Because when I started this, just me personally, I was looking to talk to people about ideas. Now everyone's about like having deep talks. This isn't necessarily political. It's not necessarily scientific, whether it's neuroscience, psychology, evolutionary biology, and it's not necessarily only self-improvement, but it's definitely the intersection of all of this. And it's basically what do we do in life, man? Like, what's next? I got tired of all the low quality arguments on the internet, on Facebook, and I wanted to find people who's really about this, because I know I'm not that special that I'm the only one in the world that's about it.
right.
And I mentioned this last week. There are more people that are interested in this, but I've been prioritizing. So some people I'm not. I do kind of want to regulate who's a part of this. I don't want people who are trolls. I don't want people who are disingenuous. People who just want to hear themselves talk. Stuff like that. Because I want this, again, to be a genuine place. Not just... Because if not, this will just end up like every internet conversation. People will just become a shouting match and all of that. And there's something Eric brought up as well that he noticed. Definitely before COVID, with COVID, a lot more podcasts are going up. There's people, especially with comedy, and then it'll be politically related. To me, this is more, not political, but this is more meaningful conversations that's also fun. Because if it's not fun, it's not worth it.
Right.
And if we just wanted... This is different from just a forum. If you want to go on a forum or a thread, you can have conversations like that. But I think video conversations is something that's also unique. And again, it's just protecting the genuineness of the community. Something that I am going to start doing, I have certain people, hopefully, like next week we'll have a communist. I have a friend who's just straight up communist. He's about that life. But he's also, I think, someone who's cool, who's genuine, who's not just someone who's an extremist just spouting stuff. It's like, hey, there's a group of people that I think are cool, and we would like to talk with you.
Yeah, he has his perspective.
Well, I can give a little bit, just my own 2 cents in terms of the group growing in size. And I would mainly base this opinion on the experience of the Jordan Peterson Facebook group that I think we're all in, because I was in that group when there was like 300 members.
Oh wow!
It was years ago, and it's just grown since. And like, so all of the mods and that, like I've talked to them like in DMs and that, and that, like, for years. And I have been saying to them for years that they're making a mistake just letting fucking thousands of people into the group. And it has become a clown car of a fucking Facebook group. Like, you just can't say anything that is contentious or that is anti-JP, like, at all. It just turns into a fucking shit show. And it wasn't always like that. It really wasn't. Like, and these guys are committed to this idea of, well, we want, like what you're saying there, Frank, said, well, we want, to bring in more people, you want things to grow, etc. But I agree with your sentiment where you're like, you want to be picky, you want to be really selective about like who you especially give the ability to contribute in conversations, because like, look, I don't think there's anything anti-free speech in admitting that some people are assholes and just they need to go fuck off to a corner and like, no, you don't get to talk like everybody else does in my group. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously politically and legally you get to say whatever you like, but the guy who is living in a bin on the side of the street does not get the same talking privileges in a Facebook group, or sorry, in my conversations, as you guys do.
Yeah, so like I'm not this in this group's description. I'm definitely not advocating for free speech, because I know I'm intentionally limiting this. An example I brought up last week was because there was actually several Facebook groups that kind of put this call out there. And what's funny is George does have a blog, but he's cool. But there's people that I'm not, yes, I'm not against people who have blogs or podcasts, but to me, they take less of a priority. There's more of a risk because I don't want them coming on here and saying things just to get clout and just to get followers to bring back.
Get traffic, yeah.
Exactly. And what's funny is that in one of the posts, two people mentioned, I have a blog, I have a podcast. For some reason, those two got into a disagreement and started strawmanning each other. It was like, this is exactly what I didn't want.
Yeah.
So it was just a little bit of comedy and irony in doing this.
I think so as far as like where you wanted to take this, like I'm happy with like the current setup. If there's like other people that you think is cool, like I'm happy whatever people to join in and that. I like I said to you guys a couple of weeks back, I'm in this to have fun. I have fun having conversations with nice people, and that's my only goal. Like I'm and like beyond that, as far as I know, I'd have to go look it up, but I think there is is it an app or is it a software or is it a website or something that you can go onto? And I don't know if it's free. I think it's free, but it will sort out putting your material onto all kind of like podcast platforms and stuff like that. It will do all that. So it'll get your thing on Spotify. It'll get it on Apple Podcasts and stuff. Now, I don't know if that's something you wanted to do or if you just want to stick to YouTube or whatever. Yeah, but like I can out the name of that if that's something or maybe you're competent enough at IT to start all that yourself.
I mean, I'm definitely interested. So I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt to look at it. Eric,
have you actually gotten? I didn't look, but what kind of views are we getting on YouTube for this?
Oh, like nothing. I think one of the videos was maybe like 14. I don't know if it's because of me refreshing or like that was the one video everyone here saw as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so because this has come up like. At first, the videos, I was just recording it for myself, to improve my language, to improve like moderating and all of that, just improving the quality of the conversation. And also just hearing all of you guys speak again, making sure I have the right ideas. But I did want to share the videos with you guys. Obviously it's useful, and then YouTube ended up being the place to go. Again, I'm not against spectators, but this was never my primary objective. I'm not looking to get clout, to get famous. It's like, I'm not, if we want to edit these, have an intro song and all that, I'm not against any of that. But for me, my primary energy is not, let me find a good intro song. Spend like 3 hours like sampling and adjusting the production. No, these are just videos. And that's why I want to keep that. I want to keep the informality. And again, this isn't, I see the benefit in sharing this with people, but at the same time, that's not the goal. Yeah. And I'm personally like not trying to get famous. Like, so I have a friend that let me be careful with it, being anonymous. I was thinking of inviting him. He's more on the left. but I've started seeing his videos because he has like YouTube, and I'm not a fan of the way he speaks and his approach, because he is trying to get views and get clout, and that's something that I'm really hesitant with. Yeah.
I find videos where there's one person trying to convince you of their point of view. It's like all you need to be is convincing, and you can convince people the Earth is flat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's no balance there. There's no pushback. I mean, you know, like if you have, like, I think the fact that there's multiple people here balances the conversation very well. I mean, you know, you've got people online who they're very convincing, and it's like, yeah, they're actually they don't know what they're talking about. They're just good at being convincing.
Yeah.
But as soon as there's another person there, that falls apart.
Yeah. Like again, I don't know, Frank, because I'm not sure what your or anybody else's goals are with this stuff or whatever. Like, but it's like I really don't care what you or anybody does with these videos or anything like that. You know? Like I really am. It's just like I have fun talking to you guys, so I'm just gonna keep talking to you guys. And it's really, and the minute it's not fun, I'll stop. You know?
Yeah. And that's like, so here's what I'm trying to start doing and to make sure in each video. I've said this before. One, this needs to have fun. It's a balance. This is not a PhD class certification where we're always just deep. You know, we'll change topics, we'll go up and down. Get shallow, make a joke, and we can get deep again, and so on and so forth. Two, I always want to bring it back, something I want to try to do. Every topic is bring it back to the individual, and it's like, how can we relate this to our own personal lives? Like self-improvement, something of the sort, something like that. There's something I think would be beneficial. And then that's kind of like the only two things. After that is, let's try and make it relevant. That's what helps make it more fun. And then, so Dan, because we've talked about this a lot, pick a relevant topic and then abstract it, go deep with emergence, because everything's connected to everything.
But like, I think if this is sorry, George, go ahead.
I'm saying, talk about relevant. Nothing is more relevant than incels to me. So there we go.
But the only thing I would say is just if anybody here is interested in maybe generating a little bit more traffic and seeing what kind of a reaction it gets from people, you probably will have to slice and dice the videos and just essentially maybe dice it up and go, you know, and have the specific part of the conversation that's talking about whatever the topic is and name the video like that, you know.
And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want to do clickbait, because that's the other thing. Like, I don't mind getting spectators, but I'm not trying. If we in the future get like 10,000 views and tons of comments, I don't want us to look at the comments and start basing our conversations on what the public thinks. Like, this is just us. They're following us. If they want to listen, if they want to comment, that's nice. If it helps people, fucking awesome. But I don't want to base it on what people say. I don't want us to worry about that. And I'd preferably not want to attract trolls. Like, that's why I don't want to do clickbait. This isn't to...
No, yeah, I wasn't talking about clickbait. I was just saying, like, just name the video after whatever the topic of the conversation is. Because, in fairness, like, I just know me, like, I'm not going to click on a 3-hour video that is just like the name of whatever, you know, and like, I will click on your one because like we're all in it and I want to re-listen to the conversation and that. But if it was somebody I didn't know, I would never click on it, you know. I don't know if avoiding that is clickbait, but anyway, no, that doesn't matter. I was just saying.
Yeah, I mean, to Danny's point, right? Like, I remember one conversation I learned a lot from was talking to Arthur about Belgium. I mean, we all learned a lot from that. But I mean, that's half an hour or whatever it was in a 3-hour. Well, it was like 5 hours. That one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was long. Because I think Arthur and I think you, I think it was us two that just stayed on for a bit longer.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just I just found it so interesting, and I learned a lot from that. But if for example, you cut that down to like title How Belgium Works, and we talk about Belgium for like 20, 30, or however long it was just that subject. That would I think, because the thing is like people look for different things for different reasons, right? They're not going to listen for 3 hours of talking about another subject if they're interested in Belgium.
Yeah.
It's so.
Yeah, so definitely, like, I've seen other videos, but Brett and Heather Weinstein do this. They have like a table of contents in their videos, so you can or just in their timeline, you can easily navigate to that. So I'm not against that. Again, it's not.
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so that's something I'm absolutely for, and I do like editing in that sense, just to present topics and all that more clearly. But again, it won't be my primary. Every week, I'm just creating outlines and trying to think of every possible outcome of this conversation, making it concise. Yeah, so my primary is the conversation. But as I have more time, I'm 100% for that, because that's like editing for clarity, and I'm all about that. The last thing what was I gonna say? Oh, all of this self-reflection, again, it just starts with me talking to people. I wasn't thinking about what's the future of this group, how do I want to grow, but with time it's like, okay, let me think about this and become aware, and what do I want from here. I'm not seeking, in a way, growth, but I do want more diversity of thought. I want more women here, not just because they're women, but diversity of thought. More sides. I do want, like, let's say, more communists, some people who are like crazy about capitalism. And what
invite a fucking Ayn Rand fan on. I want to pick the brain of those fucking people.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But so what I would say is, if you guys have anyone that are in your social circles or friends that are genuine and nice and are interested in these conversations, like, I trust everyone's judgment here. If you want to invite someone you think fits, have them join in.
Yeah,
I want more people with different thoughts.
I would love to find a not nuts Ayn Rand fan and just try and understand what the fuck is going on there, because Jesus Christ, those people can sometimes be awful cult members. Now, at the same time, okay, I should be careful, because I feel like there definitely are completely reasonable ones, but just I've never interacted with one.
Yeah.
I think having seen Jordan Peterson's reaction to being compared to Ayn Rand, his reaction was no, that's partially right, but there's this whole other half of existence too.
Yeah.
That he makes a much more balanced point. That culture is good and bad, not just bad, not just good. So yeah,
I would say that's my bit on the growth of this. Again, anyone here can invite anyone they want to. More people, more diversity, fucking awesome. And yeah, that's kind of like, that's where the mindset, that's where the vibe, that's the direction where I envision us going.
I would like to see slightly more disagreement, if that.
Yes. So something I try and do, because, okay, for example, because I know we all have a lot of overlap. And for example, we can get into a line of dialogue. There's a balance. So for me, I've been in other circles where, hey, they talk about the left and they're going too far, and then talk about the right and they're going too far. And, corporations are corrupt, right? And so is the government. And it's just, it's almost like an echo chamber. It's like, yes, we all already agree on this.
Yeah.
It is good to talk about it at first, for all of us to get comfortable with each other. And secondly, it does help refine one's speech. It helps us articulate it.
Yep.
But this is where I meant, where I try and make it concise. Like, I try and go to the end point. It's like, okay, this is where I think everyone already is. Now, where do we disagree? It's always, so what now?
Yeah.
Like with Jordan Peterson, a lot of his stuff can get repetitive if you're already familiar. It's like, so what's next?
I think that I really like what we're doing. I think that, as far as, like you were saying, having spectators or having people watch or even participate to a certain degree. I think what we're doing is actually leading by example. I think that we're having a good conversation the way conversation should be had. And I think that having controversy or conflict is absolutely fine, and having deeply conflicting views on. But then what we really want to do is focus mostly on not the conflict, but how we resolve it and how we handle it. Because that's the key that people need to see. It's like you can absolutely have a civil conversation with someone who thinks completely different than you, and I think that's what we've touched on here. And that's what I'm hoping that where the direction's going to go in a little bit. So I don't mind people watching and participating as long as we are explicit about being polite and civil to each other.
100%. And we've started touching on that, kind of like nice. And you started touching on that, like a little bit of disagreements in past conversations with like how to raise kids and like that whole responsibility. And I liked how we were kind of developing this dot as a group. A lot, I think, when me and Danny were on like 2 weeks ago, we spent like that whole session just finding the right language with each other, with emergence and all that. And I think that's really good. It's like you said, Eric, we're not going to seek out the conflict, but I think once we get past this point, okay, this is where we already agree. What's the solutions? As we start trying to figure that out, that's where we'll start seeing the disagreement. And when we start trying to find solutions, that's where we'll see the disagreement, and that's where it'll get more interesting, I think.
Right. Awesome.
So, I mean, that's kind of like my bit for the growth. I have another topic as well we can touch on, but I think, Danny, you had one already in mind.
I'll just throw out my question, and then you can bring up your topic, and we'll see what people want to talk about. Because my topic is just something I came up with right in mid-conversation. So if people think that your idea is more fun, then we'll do with that. That's totally fine with me. I was going to ask the question, do you guys think Jordan Peterson is optimistic?
Yeah.
Be an optimistic person, because I don't know what to think, because on the one hand, he's all about trying to figure shit out and solve problems and stuff like that. But at the same time, there is something very apocalyptic about the way he talks about stuff sometimes. He talks in very apocalyptic terms, But so that's my topic. And I don't know if Frank wants to ask his thing and people can figure out which one they want to touch on.
I'll do both really quick because I feel like your topic is kind of a short one. For me, my answer would be I think he is optimistic, especially coming back from everything he's going through. I think maybe there are instances the language could be nihilistic, but I think he's just going. I think he's more of a realist, and he sees the hope. He's like, look, kind of we were talking before, like the world can be really dark, and he goes to those dark places, and he just really articulates all of that. But he always ends, or I guess his philosophy is that there is a way out, and you can redeem yourself, and so on and so forth along those lines. So that's why I wouldn't say he's a nihilist or pessimist. He acknowledges the depth.
When he says something like all of life is suffering.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this before. I think maybe that was, at least I hope so. That's more of a connotation. It's not that he's saying life is suffering, but all of life, more accurately, would be all of life contains suffering.
Yeah, I think he means like the potential for suffering is always present. There's no definitive how much or how little you'll have. The only thing that matters is, I guess, how hard you work to try to resist it or try to prevent it.
I'm going to answer that in a slightly different way. I would say, from my perception, he's optimally pessimistic.
That is a very Jordan Peterson answer.
Because the thing is like, would you want an optimistic airline pilot? No, you want the guy to prepare for every eventuality and hope that they never happen. And like, there's a saying astronauts have on the International Space Station: "What's the next thing that's going to kill me?" Well, always preparing, and his philosophy is, right, these bad things can happen, and they're going to happen. So you've got to put yourself together and work on this, on the best way you can, and work and for the best possible outcome. And then maybe something incredible can happen. But you've got all of this pessimism to counter first. If you get yourself together, yes, you can get to the shining light on a hill, but to get there, you've got to be protected against all of these bad things. You've got to be moving forward. So I would say he's optimally pessimistic with a slight hint of optimism at the end.
So this is what I would say. Like, I feel like if these labels were kind of differing, it might differ, but when you explain like the way George explained it, like the definition, yeah, I agree with that.
I liked Eric's thing as well of it's like the potential. It's like, yes, if you are always able to fuck up your life royally and make things way worse, but you can avoid that, like if you learn, or not so much learn, but if you have the right approach, have the right attitude. So I don't know, Andrew, if you, because I find him to be a very paradoxical kind of guy. Like sometimes he comes across like super fucking optimistic. Like you listen to him on climate change and I'm like, yes, preach, thank you very much. But then other times when he's just like, all of life is suffering, man, Jesus, all you can do is just bear your cross. I'm just like, no, that's not fucking like, so it's, I find it to be very confusing that way. I don't know what you think, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. He certainly is very paradoxical. I would say that the way in which he speaks, like the language that he uses, is directed at the person who's in the deepest part of hell in the room.
Yeah.
I think it's with the purpose of conveying that message to you when you end up there, because we're all going to end up there at some point in time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Like, because it's just the reason I ask is like I think that it's one of the things that attracted me to him first, and he's not always like this, but I think he does have this streak in him, is that I think it's very kosher these days to kind of like denigrate people, to denigrate humans. And so whether it's something really extreme like, well, we're fucking murdering the planet, or whether it's something less extreme, but it's just like you might say something like, oh, well, people are just kind of like these fundamentally biased things, and we're full of, whether it's literally religious sin or we're full of a kind of more political, like you're irredeemable in some sense because of your views, and people are just so susceptible to shitty ideas, and all of these trends, all of these kinds of ways of speaking badly about humanity are so popular. And I quite liked how Jordan, although he can be negative sometimes, on the other hand, there is a streak in him where he's just like, look, we're really not that bad. Like we are capable of some pretty amazing, things, man.
Oh wow, that's good.
Yeah, it's like he's got that in him, and it's like I really liked that, because man, I get really sick of listening to people talk shit about humans. Like I don't think they're fucking bad.
I find it's such a pseudo intelligence when people are nihilistic, and it's like, oh well, we're just killing the planet, and it's like, yeah, but we've also made a bunch of shit too. Right. It's a consequence of actually building the civilization, which is now at a point where we can start saving the planet again.
Yeah,
and it's like, sure, we've put a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, but we've now just about got the technology to start bringing it back out again. And I find it such a pseudo intellectual trait, to just be nihilistic about people, and it's so easy to come to that conclusion from such a little amount of data.
Right. Oh yeah, exactly. And I just like his point about how we can be altruistic and the reasoning behind that makes it that much better when we commit good, right? So
yeah, and he talks about the real power of the individual, like, you know, where the individual with the right approach to life, you know, can affect immense change and immense positive change, you know. And it's like, I'm sitting there going, yeah, like that resonates with me, you know. I'm like that, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, that's definitely true. Like, I don't know if I've ever been that guy, but I know people that have been like that guy, in my opinion, you know, where it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's pretty fucking amazing. You know, they seem to just manifest positive outcomes and just goodness. You know, they make people around them happy. They make their environment better. You know, and like, that's kind of why the sort of cynicism and the pessimism that's directed specifically towards people that is so common these days. It just annoys me, and it's like, you know, like, and one of the things that's ironic about it is, in that kind of pessimism, there's actually a sort of, so especially in, like, you can see it most obvious in like the people who are like super, you know, we gotta go fucking carbon neutral in the next 6 months or everybody's gonna die, you know. And it's like there's a kind of blind optimism actually hidden in the background in that. And what I mean is, their solution, they're so pessimistic that they're suggesting a solution that is guaranteed to kill all of us unless they assume that there are no unknown problems in the future. So they're assuming a kind of optimistic thing, that there are no further problems going to come down the road. And so that assumption is letting them suggest, well, we need to just completely tank the global economy just to fix this one problem. They're so pessimistic about it. And I find that really, really interesting. You know, like
it reminds me of the way you're phrasing it. It's like, if I were to meet those people, or if you were to meet those people, Danny, you could be like, what? That sounds so optimist. What's really nihilistic is that. And it sounds like this comedic thing. I'm pretty sure other people have seen it on the internet. Like, when you meet a crazy conspiracy theorist, like, let's say the moon landing was fake, your response should be, oh, you still believe in the moon.
Yeah. yeah.
So there's a comedic side to that.
Hey guys, I gotta head out real quick. But I will be on again next week. Look forward to seeing the rest of this video, because this sucks to have to step out right now.
No worries.
Well, have a good night.
All right, we'll see you guys soon.
all right,
All right, bye bye.
I'll be back in a sec, guys. Just gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that you know, like I really do feel sorry for Greta Thunberg, because, like, you know, she has autism. You know, she was, at the time when she became very popular, she was what, 17, 16. And it's like, you're still very young at that age. And she was shot to global fame for something she really didn't have a very good understanding of. And, you know, and everyone says, yeah, but she's saying listen to scientists. And it's like, yeah, but that hasn't actually come up with a suggestion that's saying listen to these guys. And it was a sort of a non-message in a way, because she wasn't actually advocating anything in particular. And what I find with her is, I kind of feel sorry for her, because it's like, she got a lot of flack, and that's not nice for anybody to go through. But she got popular not because she had a solution, but because people just wanted to make her popular. It served the media's purpose to follow the story, and people got a lot out of it, virtue signaling, and you know, people made money out of her. She didn't. I don't think she made that much money out of what she did. But the real thing I always thought, and it comes back to something vaguely what Jordan Peterson said, is like, you can't fix anything unless you're an expert in something. And at 16, you're just not an expert in anything yet. You haven't put in the time. And, you know, one thing that I find very optimistic for the future is, the airline industry is changing in huge ways, right? The A380s, the 747s, anything with 4 engines, no one can afford to run them anymore. So what we're doing is we're now running smaller Embraers and Airbuses and Bombardiers, which are now Airbus 200s. We're running smaller aeroplanes that carry less people, but it's a more direct destination. So from smaller airport to smaller airport, which is better for the customer at the end of the day. But the real thing that I find optimistic for the environment is if we've seen that the days are about a degree warmer and the nights are about a degree cooler without contrails. And this was actually first observed during the 9/11 shutdown, where they shut down all global air traffic during the 9/11 crisis. They found that the contrails cool the days by a degree in areas where planes fly over 30,000 feet, and at night they keep about a degree of warmth in. And we could affect at least a degree of climate control by using aeroplanes at strategic times of day. If you fly during the day, you leave contrails which reflect off the light, and that'll keep the days a degree cooler. And if you close the airspace above 18,000 feet at night, half an hour before sunset to half an hour before sunrise, you're letting that heat radiate back out into space. And so there's at least 1 degree of climate control we have control over. That's massive. 2 degrees is what the Paris Climate Accord is trying to keep the global temperature fluctuation down by. Less than 2 degrees of global warming. Half of that we can do with aeroplanes.
Well, so I hadn't heard that, and that's fine, but I think as a general point, it's there are so many, at least as far as I can tell, misconceptions on the environment stuff. And when I say misconceptions, I don't mean misconceptions about, man-made global warming or anything like that. None of the disputes about how settled the science is. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about misconceptions as just basic as the whole approach of what we need to do is prevent the planet from warming up. And it's all about preventative measures, and it's dude, there's no way you are going to inevitably avoid a problem. You need to instead kind of just have a strategy of fixing problems when they come up. If medicine had focused on avoiding people getting broken noses, they would never have figured out how to fix a fucking broken nose, or avoid people getting sick. You need to instead have an attitude of, okay, well, in the event, and as far as I know anyway, I could be wrong about this, but all of the stuff, even the most extreme policies that are being put forward about making the planet or making certain countries carbon neutral by 2 years from now or whatever it is, none of that is being offered as a way of fixing the planet warming. It's being offered as a means of delaying it warming. It's so you're just sitting there going, okay, well, what do you do then? You still haven't figured out what to do when the planet does warm up a little bit. What is your proposal for figuring out how to live in a warmer planet? Or what is your proposal for cooling it down again once it's warmed and stuff? I like what you're talking about, George, is in why are we not talking about regulating the temperature of the climate like we do our houses? Oh, yeah. I understand that that's a much bigger thing, but there's no reason why why wouldn't we talk about that? Why wouldn't we consider that as a possibility? This idea that you can inevitably just prevent a certain kind of problem from arising, that you can know in advance what that problem will be and figure out a way to avoid it. Nobody would have been able to tell you in the year 1900 when scientists were studying uranium-234, and nobody would have been able to tell you that 60 years from later that research would have led to the thing, which is the Cold War, which would have been the biggest problem on everybody's mind. Nobody would have known that. And then nobody would have known in the year 1960 that carbon dioxide was going to be everybody's biggest concern in 2020, you know? And it's the same today. Like, we don't know what everybody's biggest concern and biggest problem is going to be 10 years from now. So this idea that we can just assume that the big problem that's going to be that needs fixing into the future is global warming, and so we're just going to do everything we can to prevent that problem from ever happening.
Yeah, you need like 20-year lead time on preventative measures. Like, you know, I understand we don't know what's going to be the biggest concern in 20 years' time, but my current guess would be a major global conflict with China.
Maybe, but I suppose my point is that, like, if you think about the civilization, so we're a civilization, right? But we're a global one. But if you look at human history and you look at all the civilizations in the past that have fallen, right? And let's say all of the ones that fell due to some kind of a plague, because that's, you know, popular. it's relevant to today, right? Like, none of those civilizations failed because they were too cautious about avoiding plague. They completely fell apart because they did not know how to deal with that problem when it happened to them.
Here we go again. You gotta confront. You gotta face responsibility.
You
can't avoid it.
My job is entirely, I get a plan, I try to build it, and then we find the problem, and you get your cutter out, and then you re-weld it, and you re-weld it, and it's like my whole job is, you know, I've got this goal, which is on the A1 piece of paper, but how to get to that goal is you take metal, cut, weld, and you just...
But can you imagine, George or Andrew or Frank, I don't know what your jobs are and stuff, but can you imagine trying to take this approach of just avoiding problems? We just need to do everything we can to prevent a problem from happening. You're just sitting there going, man, you'd get stuck straight away and you'd just fuck everything up. You have to have an attitude of problems are fucking inevitable, man. They're inevitable. And there's going to be so many of those problems that are going to surprise us. You know, we won't expect them. And we just need to have an approach of, right, yeah, but we can solve these problems. We just need to know how. And it's the same with global warming. It's like, if we take this approach of at any cost, we're going to avoid the issue of the planet warming. And then if we do that, and then some other problem comes along that we didn't anticipate, we have crippled ourselves and our ability to solve that new problem. You know, the entirety of human history, where people lived in kind of conservative religious cultures, all those cultures ever did was warn against, you know, it's like, well, we do what we do because it prevents problems from happening. It keeps us safe. We do the same thing as we've done before because it works. And it's like, and every single time, the minute a new problem came along that they didn't have any ideas about, their culture wasn't able to deal with it. Like, so a really funny, not funny, but a cool example is, you know, Easter Island?
Oh yeah, with the heads.
Yeah. So we don't know exactly what happened to the people on Easter Island and what made that culture, that people go extinct, right? But we do know, based on, because we can date the different heads and how old they are and stuff. So what we know is that the heads, there is various heads of different sizes that were built at different periods, and many of these heads are actually kind of being in the middle of being transported to their final locations. And so what we can tell from the dating is that these people were building more and more and bigger heads as whatever it was that eventually led to their doom killed them all. And so now I'm not saying that these heads were these people's solution to whatever the problem was, but the point is that these people did not have an attitude of, well, what we've got to do is we've got to anticipate that there are going to be problems that we don't know how to solve, and we need to change the way we do things to adapt to problems. Instead, their attitude seems to be, we make big fucking stone heads for whatever reason, and as our doom approaches, we need to just make more and bigger stone heads. You know, and it's do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, so I think that there's a similar kind of attitude in the way the environmentalists are approaching this global warming thing.
The one thing I thought that blew my mind when learning about World War II and reading more and more about World War II is after the D-Day invasions in northern France, and as France was being liberated, the Nazis actually diverted resources away from the front line to the concentration camps to speed up the genocide of the undesirable, the Jews, the gays, the black, everybody that they blamed the loss of World War I on. They took resources away from the front line where the Americans, British, and the Free French were fighting to attack the people that they blamed for the war. So when people say, "Oh, what if the Nazis won the war?" and it's like they weren't going to, because when we landed in France, they became weaker and weaker to us because they were moving more and more of their resources into the things that they blamed, but they were blaming the wrong things. So if they blamed the Americans for losing World War I and the British, they would have put more and more soldiers on the front line, but they didn't. They took soldiers away from the Siegfried Line, and they took soldiers away from the Eastern Front as well to the death camps, and that's why Nazism was always going to fail. They were blaming the wrong things. They were, and they believed that the quicker they did this genocide, the quicker they could win the war. Well, that's just the understanding.
It's a failure to adapt to new problems.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, or to like the unknown, because you don't know what's gonna come about in the future. But I think it's a balance.
Like I think Andrew trying to get in something there.
You see, the thing is that system of diversing the gendarmerie in France to death camps, the police in Germany to death camps, and the Polish police, that process worked when they were fighting the resistance, because people were less likely to resist if their families were in one of these camps. And it was a case of, right, for every German you kill, we kill 100 prisoners. And, well, then all of a sudden, if you've got family in there, you're less likely to be a member of a resistance. So diversing police away from policing the streets to policing the camps actually worked very well at quashing resistances. It did not work against the American front line and the Sherman tank.
No, yeah.
So they didn't adapt, and that's you know, it's a very sad part of history. But you know, some of these terrible things the Germans did, they were very effective.
Andrew,
I actually gotta go run some errands and stuff, so I'm gonna have to hop off.
That's cool, man.
I gotta get in soon too. But anyway, we'll see you soon.
All right, and yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that kind of really got me thinking what Danny said about how we're not taking adaptive measures rather than preventative, because I mean, as humans, we're a product of adaptation, so that's
Yeah.
I never even thought about that.
You know what? Like, I don't want to fucking go too deep, but like, that is not an accident. Like what I think what humans do with problem solving is very, very analogous to what evolution does to produce adaptive solutions to certain things. It's that's a whole other fucking issue. But like what you've just noticed is not an accident, man. It is a really, really fundamental, I think, truth about information and its interaction with reality. Like it's really fucking cool stuff.
Right.
It's something I was saying about the gun control. I think that in America, the solution to gun violence has to come from conservatives, because conservatives are really the ones that are the solutions. Have a good one, Andrew. But it's like if you talk to a conservative person about global warming and you say, look, they're polluting this lake and it's disgusting and it's they're on your side. But if you start talking about moral obligation of the rich and stuff, then that you've lost them. So I think the real solution to global warming has to come from the right. The people who are resisting it right now.
I actually, I mean, I don't know really, because I think global warming is a bit more complicated. But like, I think before we know what the solution to global warming is going to look like there really does need to be some fundamental shifts in some really like philosophical mistakes that are really common. Like the notion of like, there's this picture that's painted that, well, the earth is finite and we are running out of resources that we can use, right? And there is a very mundane meaning behind the phrase that the earth is finite, and then there is another meaning which is just totally wrong. Like, so the mundane meaning is just, well, there's a finite amount of matter on planet earth, and it's like, yeah, okay, fine, that's true, but that's just trivially true. It doesn't really help us with anything. But the other thing, so this idea that, for example, like energy resources that we currently have, like they're running out, and where there's this picture of there's like this pile of shit and this is our resources, and then people just take from this pile, and that's what we do. And this is, people are spoken about like we're some kind of parasite on the planet, but like that's just wrong. Like, water was not an energy resource until we had discovered the technology to make it an energy resource. So what is and is not a resource depends on the current technology and knowledge that people have. So oil, crude oil was just a bunch of useless black gunk that was found in various parts of the world, and it was completely useless. Anyone who found oil in the year 1600 wouldn't have had anything to do with it. It wouldn't be an energy resource for them. But the minute we have the knowledge to burn it and to refine it and then burn it in a particular way, now it's an energy resource. And the knowledge not only to refine it and burn it, but to distribute it efficiently. A really funny example is, do you remember? I don't know what age you are, Frank, but I feel like me and George are definitely old enough to remember cathode ray tube TVs.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Frank?
Can you describe it?
Like the TVs, but they were like fucking huge.
Yeah,
they weren't flat.
Really bad. Huge back.
I think if you might be hard to believe, but I think I'm older than George.
Really?
I'm the same age as you, Danny. 94.
Yeah.
So I'm 26.
Damn, so close. Now I'm 30 years old.
Oh,
fuck. You are not.
Yeah, I'm 30.
Wow. You don't look 30. Well done.
Thank you. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
It's the trends.
Yeah. But so if you remember, cathode ray tube TVs, like on the screen, there was like 3 different colored pixels. So if you put your face like fucking half an inch away from a screen on a cathode ray tube telly, you would see it was made up of a whole load of tiny little arrangements of these 3 colored pixels: red ones, green ones, and blue ones. Right? Now the red pixels were made out of I can't even remember the name of the element. It's a really weird one. It's like ordopinium or something like that, or that's completely wrong, but let's say it's ordopinium. That's a made-up word. But what was unique about this element is that it was the only element that when you, I don't know, was it when you put certain kinds of electricity or something through it, or when you shone light through it, it gave off this red color, right? And so there was real scientists at the time that we're saying, well, ordopinium is actually one of the most rare elements on the planet. And so we need to enjoy colored television while it lasts, because we are going to run out of the element that we need to make these red pixels that we use for colored TV. So they were viewing resources like this. Like, we have a finite amount of resources, and in this case, we're talking about resources needed for colored television. And when we run out, that's it. But that's ridiculous, obviously, now, because what happened is just, well, we don't care about ordopinium anymore. You know, we have liquid crystal display televisions. You know, we don't give a shit. We have new technology.
Do you believe the red was gold? If I'm not mistaken. It's red. If I remember right.
Whatever the element was, it wasn't gold anyway. But
because I know for red windows, for like those red windows in church, they actually put specks of gold, and they comes out red. So it's but no, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Like, technology moves on and leaves that resource behind.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, it sounds like a really simple thing to say, but it means that, like, the whole picture of natural resources that is painted by somebody like Greta Thunberg just it's fundamentally wrong. It's really pessimistic. It's really pessimistic.
Yeah, this is like where Jordan says, like, we shouldn't be too pessimistic about having more people on the earth, because maybe that person will provide the ingenuity for like new technology and such.
Thomas Malthus, that guy that originally put forward this idea about, you know, the Earth, it was a limited population and stuff. There's even like people now where they'll calculate a fucking like number of like whatever it is that there's a name for it, of like the amount of people that a certain square of land can support. Like it's all bullshit, because the amount of people that a certain square of land can support depends on the technology that those people have. Like, we are in the middle of there's like a tree line being planted. I think it's at the bottom of the Sahara. I'm not sure, is it the Sahara or is it some other desert? And
that's it. I think I remember.
And the ultimate goal is to push green lands into the Sahara to de-desert a desert. Do you know?
China, and it's in China they built a road years and years ago. This was in the 80s. They built a road and irrigated the whole road because they didn't want it getting overwhelmed by the sand. So they irrigated, like, I think it was 30 meters either side of this road, and through the Gobi Desert, there's just this strip of green. Guy Martin did a 24-hour bike ride over it. And it's incredible. It's just like you've got Gobi Desert on both sides and just this strip of oasis in the middle.
But that makes the point perfectly, because if you try to calculate, you know, the amount of people that a square kilometer of the Sahara Desert could support, it's like a million. Yeah. Whereas the minute people bring knowledge to bear on that square kilometer, like there's no limit to the amount of people that it can support. And it's so like there's so many very simple sounding but really important mistakes that are being made when it comes to problems like climate change and when it comes to other kind of existential risk issues and stuff. Like, it's and this issue of pessimism and viewing people as just crappy and denigrating people and viewing us like we're just a bunch of takers. You know, well, wasn't the planet so lovely before we came along? And it's like isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how, well, it's not funny, but it is a little bit funny how people are seen as these like just horrible parasites on the planet, and then there are other species that are viewed as like this net positive, like bees, you know. And it's like I wonder does anybody really take seriously the idea that, like, okay, unless there's people around, literally every single species that is alive today is eventually going to die on the planet. Like, all of them, The pandas, the koalas, the dolphins, the whales, all the ones that environmentalists love, they're all dead eventually, guaranteed, without people around.
Yeah, I mean, just
Whether-
like natural evolution, some species went extinct without humans.
Well, yeah, that or some kind of natural disaster, or eventually when the sun blows up and just consumes the whole fucking solar system. But with people can do something about that. With the right technology, humans could take our sun and stop that from happening. It's totally physically possible that humans could have the technology to stop that from happening. And it's like
the movie that there was a movie about that where they poured water on the sun, and it's like, no, hydrogen and oxygen, one thing to put on the sun to not make it blow up.
yeah. But it's in because this all sounds very simple. It sounds very just like, but it's actually really fucking profound. Like it says something about the kind of thing that people are compared to other animals. You know, like we are problem solvers. We can fix things like other species can't. And environmentalists just have when they view people as just these horrible parasites, like it's really wrong. And more importantly, if they're taken seriously, it'll be the death of us. It will literally kill us all.
I do find people that believe that actually act it out too. They kind of parasitic lifestyles themselves. It's like, you know, they're not people who produce, not people who fix problems. They just yeah, I mean, you know, the stereotypical caricature is the professor who takes his paycheck from the uni and teaches kids just about how terrible they are.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you know, Jordan Peterson teaches people how terrible they are, but how it's like that line in Harry Potter, that first Harry Potter film, you know, when he's getting his wand, it's like, oh, Voldemort did amazing things, wicked, but they were amazing. And it's like we have that capability.
There's something I would say to Danny, just to provide a little bit of balance, because I do think, it's a balance between adapting and preventing. So, for example, like I completely agree, like we should adapt for the unknown, like the nose example. We shouldn't just prevent it. We should learn just in case how to fix it. But we should also learn how to prevent. Just again, this is the obvious point. I'm pretty sure we'll all agree on. Hey, how not to get a cold or just COVID. You should do that.
The phrase is like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or whatever it is. And it's like, there's a certain wisdom to it, but it's as a broader philosophy, this preventative, this kind of precautionary approach, that is the approach that civilizations in the past took, and they're all dead. You know, and it's like there's something oddly religious about this attitude. If you look at, because environmentalists view the history or the more modern history of the earth as like, well, there was this period in the past where there was like Mother Earth, and Mother Earth provided for us when we were hunter-gatherers. And just at some point, we have just spoiled it. We've ruined it. You know, we have gotten too big for our boots, and we are now on the precipice of ruining this Mother Earth, this provider of us. And this notion of a period of providence followed by some kind of fall from grace it's in ancient Greek with like the Golden Age era and that, and it's before Pandora's box was opened. It's in Christianity with Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit. It's so interesting, and it's also really fucking creepy how these kinds of ideas just crop up all the time, like in human history.
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic how a lot of the environmentalist leftists hate Christianity and hate religion, and it's like you're acting out the same scripture. I mean, like the thing is I don't think the Bible is literally true, but it's got some stories in it that are certainly metaphorically repeated constantly.
Yeah.
and have morals of the story that that people act them out in life. So it is sort of ironic that they reject Christianity and act it out perfectly.
It's just that I think it's at least in this case, I think the explanation is just that it all comes from the same. Excuse me.
Here we go.
It all comes from the same like wrong attitude. It's this idea that you shouldn't have an approach of solving problems. What you need to do is just stick with what you know, do what you're told, stick with the things that have worked in the past, and that's it. That's all you need. It's this, because within religion, obviously, especially the more modern ones, this idea that all that needs to be known is known already, and it's revealed within our religious traditions and our scriptures. That idea percolates and grows into certain kinds of consequences, and some of those consequences are this kind of notion that, well, everything was. If there are problems like this cropping up, it's because you've screwed something up. There's a natural balance and a natural state of things, and you've come along and ruined that. Do you know?
Something that's interesting is that, like you mentioned, one way to say it is it's the adapting that saves us. But with doing like evolution and all that, I want to say for the most part, each time a species or whatever was able to survive through adaptation or go to the next level, every adaptation was like an accident, sometimes a mutation or a tool that they picked up. It was by accident. I don't think, to go a little bit more meta, the next step would be to make adapting with intention the next thing. And as soon as we start, like what you're doing, as soon as we start developing that perspective and then propagating that idea, no, like you should always try and solve your problems, like try and adapt to it instead of trying to prevent it. That's gonna like accelerate our growth and all that.
And that's why we think, so our ideas can die, not us. It's like, all right, I can do 10 things here, which I was like, no, that's a bad idea. That'll get you definitely killed. And then it's like, okay, maybe the stone axe is the best idea.
But there's some very, very deep analogies to what we do when it comes to our thoughts. So like, I follow a philosopher called like Karl Popper and stuff, and like he had this idea that human knowledge consists of a process of conjecture and criticism, right? Alternating. And he called this an evolutionary approach. So he conceived of the stuff that is in him, the stuff that human knowledge is actually the same stuff that makes up the information in genes. And so in the same way that genes improve, what they do is new mutations, new conjectures are merged into the world, and then those conjectures, those mutations are subjected to selection, to criticism by reality. They're tested, and then only the ones that, it's not necessarily the ones that are true, it's just the ones that are better than its competitors keep going, get to live on. Right?
And I would say it's because they're in a way more true.
Yeah, there's something about their ability to solve the problems that those genes are encountering, right? That it's better at solving those problems than its competitors. And then human ideas, the same, like he was trying to put the idea that it's the same stuff that's in human ideas, but the difference is, and you hit the nail on the head there, George, right? Humans are the kind of things where their ideas can die in their place. And so what that means is that the overwhelming amount of evolution that has actually taken place on planet Earth has taken place in human minds.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, because humans have taken that evolutionary process, and because they don't have to die for the ideas to evolve, the ideas just evolve a million times faster.
Mhm.
And it's I'm fascinated by that idea. I think that's so fucking cool. Like, I mean,
it goes back to the whole overpopulation argument. It's like, we need more kids that are genius. Like the thing that would solve most of our problems is getting every child on Earth adequate nutrition when they're growing up. We only need one genius to solve a big problem, and it's solved for everybody. It was one guy who invented one person invented each part of the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
Steam engine. It's like, well, now we can use oil and gasoline. Well, gasoline, when it was first pumped out the ground, when it was refined, it was originally thrown into rivers because it was useless.
Yeah.
We've got this huge resource and we've got these steam engines, and I can do a little bit of jimmying this thing, and all of a sudden, now I can drive about on a resource that people were throwing into a river a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why for I believe everyone here knows about the idea of entropy. To me, that's very, very relative, because it depends on how you define inefficiency. But you could, if you find a way, like we're talking about, to be using it in a new, innovative way, all of a sudden you're more efficient.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is like the internal combustion engine was more efficient, but the physics definition of entropy is like, we got this car that's moving down the road and everything, but it produced heat. So the gasoline went from a more ordered state into the engine, mixed with air. Bang! It's now in a more disordered state because it's now heat energy. So it went from chemical energy, it burned. Now we got. I mean, the typical internal combustion engine is only about 30% efficient. So if you counted if you take the reaction and calculate the amount of energy that you get out of that reaction, times that by the amount of molecules that are doing this burning, and then measure that number of joules of energy, it's like we only get about 30% of that actually turning force on the wheel.
Exactly, and the rest is entropy.
It's all gone entropy, because that 100% is now a different. It's now carbon dioxide, water, and heat. So it's gone from octane, oxygen, and now it's into a lower energy state as carbon dioxide and water, but the carbon dioxide and water are at a lower energy state, but they're hot. So there's conservation of mass, conservation of energy in this reaction, but it's kicked out a lot of heat. Now we take that heat because as things get hot, they expand. That pushes a piston down, and we get a 30% efficiency turning the wheels of a car. So we get a little bit out of that too, but the engine's got hot. It's like humans. We eat food. We take that chemical energy of an apple. We turn the cellulose into sugar, water, all these different things that are in a lower energy state, but we're running at 37 degrees Celsius. So, we're kicking off huge amounts of metabolic heat, and we're peeing out urine and poop. We're an entropy machine. We take ordered food and turn it into heat, and the motion, we decide what we do with that motion. But the entropy is the idea is that things go from more ordered to less ordered. Now, the most difficult thing to explain is how a crystal forms, because it goes from all these random molecules of, say, silica, right? And then you heat it up, and it forms this beautiful crystal that you can then use in a window. It's gone from disordered to ordered. But the reason why
it depends on the level of perspective.
Level of emergence.
No, what's happened here is they've heated the atoms and the molecules up, and they form a crystal. But that crystal is in a lower energy state because it's kicking off heat. It was giving away heat. So when you put sand in you got a glass machine. You put sand in, you flick it on, it heats up, makes glass. The glass coming out is at a lower temperature than the sand going in. It doesn't quite work perfectly like that.
Yeah,
Look, I mean, but in all of those cases, in none of those circumstances is entropy ever decreasing. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So I mean, like it's not like our discovery of new ways to use resources, or even resources that are kind of waste products of previous systems. It's not like any of that violates the second law of thermodynamics. You know, it's just that. Sorry.
No, it never does. It can't.
Like, so as in, so we go through some process of mixing certain kinds of fuel, and then that produces a waste product. Like, in that process of using that fuel, we have increased entropy. We've lost some energy, some kind of, as you say, there's some amount of inefficiency, and then it's completely great that we can then take some of our waste products, if we know how, and use that. So in that sense, we have reduced, I guess, the amount of just waste, but that's not the same as reducing the amount of entropy that's being created. You know, like.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see where you're going. There's a difference in the definition. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, well, they overlap in the way that we talk about stuff, obviously. You know, like, I mean, to be honest, I'm not going to lie. I only did a couple of courses on thermodynamics and that in college, and entropy never made a whole lot of sense to me. Like, I was just
applicable. Like, the thing is, like, I did engineering in school, and it's like, you know, here's how you make a plan. Here's how you take a plan and make it in the workshop, and here's, you know, we're going to break something to test exactly how many newtons it took. It's like, for physicists, yes, entropy is important to them, but I've never seen a practical application of it for myself. It's
well,
like,
I'm sure if you were trying to design a fucking jet engine, like, entropy is going to be pretty important. Like,
yeah, you'd be more concerned about the specific temperatures of certain things. You know, like, what's the temperature the fuel comes in, what's the temperature of the air that, you know, after it's been compressed. Because, like, in a jet engine, for example, you've got bleed air, which we take, so the big fan at the front compresses the air. And most of it is bypassed, so it's just a big propeller. But the actual jet engine now, when you compress the air, it gets up to 400 degrees Celsius. We take some of that air and pump it into the cabin to keep pressure for people. You got to cool it down first. Otherwise, it gets a bit hot. So then you've got a reduced mass and a reduced temperature going into the combustion chamber where you're mixing the fuel. So and generally the fuel is about -50 as well in a jet engine, because it's cold in the wings. And then you end up, so that's actually not ideal, because what you want is the hottest exhaust gases. Like in a rocket, you can make the exhaust gases hotter or heavier to give you more fuel. So, like, a hydrogen rocket is hydrogen and oxygen. That makes water. Like, you see the space shuttle, those space shuttle boosters on the actual shuttle itself. The flame is almost, because the flame that comes out is clear because it's water. It's just incredibly hot. It's burnt hydrogen and oxygen. And at that point, it's incredibly hot. But the reason why you don't get that great of thrust, especially in an atmosphere from hydrolarcs, is it's so light that the exhaust gases are so light. Whereas the solid rocket boosters on the side, they're kicking out these huge molecules. And they're dirty. It was dirty as hell, those SRBs. But they're more powerful because they're actually kicking out a heavier waste product.
Yeah, solid fuel.
Yeah, solid fuel is pretty dirty when you burn it, but very effective at getting something into orbit.
Something I wanted to bring up. I forgot to tie it with something, but so Jordan talks about, like, you know, the chaos and order, and I've seen other people phrase it different ways. For example, I feel like there's okay, so there's something universal about this viewing reality like chaos and order. But there's another relationship that I've seen. So, for example, when it comes to just life, I feel like you can apply this to multiple situations. Let's say, just like let me start there, like the struggle with life. As a kid, you're naive. Life is great. Life is fun. But then a catastrophe happens, and you can become resentful and pessimistic. You realize you learned the dark side of life. But the goal is to not stay there. The goal is to find like the meaning and the positive and the light. So to me, it's like there's 3 stages. There's like the naive stage, there's the resentful stage, and then there's like you overcome something, you find like the hope. And I see that parallel in different areas. So for example, like dating, like the incels. You can be naive at first.
Stage 2.
No. Yeah, you can be naive, and then you can get resentful, but then you can learn and see the hope. Like, oh wait, there's a proper way to do it. It's not just a proper way. And I will refer this back to living. You don't dismiss the negative, but there's something meaningful, like in the suffering. Like, why have friends? Friends can hurt you. Yeah, that's true. Like, maybe friends down during your life, maybe one day they'll stop being your friends or they'll betray you. That doesn't mean never have any friends. That means you find
friends.
Yeah, you find the meaning in still in the pursuit of friends. So you're not. This is what Jordan talks about too a little bit. You don't become in denial of it. And it kind of ties with everything. It's not, you don't tell someone you're perfectly okay the way you are. You're not in denial of the negative, but you find something that rises up out of that, and it's like the meaning or what makes it worthwhile in the pursuit.
Yeah.
So when I look at that, someone talked about there's a certain order, there's a default structure, but then chaos comes in. But you need to find, I think, maybe it's like a more emergent order that comes out of that.
I think, and I think that Jordan's picture of order and chaos is as a bit of a. It's his way of describing what I would put as chaos is all of the, because like reality is this thing. Reality is the way it is, and humans don't have direct access to reality. All we have access to is interpretations of it. We don't perceive anything for what it really is, because all of our perceptions are themselves just crackles of electricity in our brain that get converted into images and sounds and sights and stuff. So everything we see is just a kind of virtual reality of what's really happening. And this leads to, so for people, what order and chaos are in the way that Jordan talks about them is chaos is all of the problems that crop up in your life.
Yeah.
And when you have a ton of problems in your life, man, and you don't know what's going on, like it feels like chaos, because you don't understand what's happening to you. You don't understand why it's happening. You don't know what you're going to do tomorrow because you're just like, fucking hell, man, I'm totally overwhelmed, And this happens as well, where if everything seems fine and then you discover like your fucking wife was cheating on you, it's like there's a whole host of new problems that you were just like not aware of yesterday, and now they're there and you don't know what to do. And so it feels like chaos. So what order is when humans bring knowledge to bear on the problems in their life.
Yep.
Because when you solve your problems and you bring knowledge to bear on them, on that chaos, you are imposing a structure. Suddenly you do understand what was causing your problem. You do understand what you want to do about it. You understand the edges of that problem because you've come up with this solution. So you're like, well, my solution will fix this bit and that bit of that problem, but there's limitations. It might not fix this other bit.
Yeah.
So now Now
And
there's
Jordan
bound.
mentions that too, like in Maps of Meaning book. He just like an analogy for order and chaos is like the known and unknown.
Yeah, but like I think it's actually like when I'm talking about problems and knowledge, like I'm not saying things necessarily as vague. It's like I think the problems are these very real and very specific kind of things, and then knowledge is this real thing that is created for the purpose of solving problems. And it's, but we don't have to get into any of that. But it's just like that. That is what I think Jordan is kind of
Touching
on, you know,
Yeah.
when he talks about order and chaos, you know, like because we've all been there. We've all been there where there's shit going on in your life and you don't know what to do about it, man. And it feels like chaos. It feels like hell, you know, depending on the problems, obviously. Sometimes problems can be really good. They can be really fun to engage with.
Problems of success, you know, the problems success brings along,
Yeah.
much easier to deal with than the problems that failure brings along. You know, like what you were talking about, you know, you feel like you've brought orders to something when you've solved a problem. This is sort of one of the tragic things about clinical depression is if a problem gets solved not by you or by chance or it goes away, it reinforces the bad things that are going on in your head because you think that solved the problem. And whereas sometimes the problem just disappears. And unfortunately, if someone has a mental disorder of any kind and a problem goes away, they feel like their disorder was the things that the disorder gave them the thoughts of.
Yeah.
This is obsessive compulsive disorder. You know, like you can teach pigeons to do all sorts of rituals before they get fed, and especially the ones that the pigeons in this particular experiment I was thinking of that formed the most complex rituals. They were fed at random, right? So they had this little lever to push down, and it would give them a pellet of food, but it was completely random, not controlled by anybody, if the lever worked or not. So they'd end up with these like peck your foot, do this, do that, press the lever, press the lever, press the lever, and they do this ritual, and it was incredible to see that pigeons could end up with obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah.
Bloody lever that was on random, but yeah, I mean, you know, obsessive compulsive disorder is people trying to make order where they you know, like they've got an error message in their brain, so they've got to make order of it, and they do a ritual and they perform a compulsion, and it doesn't actually have any effect on the real world. You know, opening a door 5 times, or you know, penny, not penny, not penny, right? Doesn't actually make any difference, but it feels like it does.
The thing about stuff like OCD is like, because I completely agree with you in that sense that these people are trying to impose they're kind of going super hard on imposing some kind of structure on stuff, you know. But I think that you can talk about imposing a structure on reality with knowledge without going that far. So you can say something. I suppose all I meant was that you could say something like, when you have problems in your life, it amounts to something like there are things happening to you and around you, and you're not entirely sure why. You can't really make sense of it. So in that sense, there's that kind of chaos. You don't know what is leading to what is leading to what is leading to what. But when you solve the problem, when you create some kind of knowledge that helps you understand what's going on, suddenly you do have a picture of this is leading to this is leading to this is leading to this. So there is now where you couldn't see structure, where you could only see chaos. Now you can see a kind of order of things.
Yeah. My point wasn't to counter yours. It was more to do with, like, you know, this is the error message. This is what goes wrong. You know, I mean, I don't disagree with you. That's you know, if you've come up with a solution, you can to a problem, you can much better identify the problem after in hindsight. But that people with OCD are doing exactly that. They've just got it completely wrong. And
fair. I misunderstood you.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Another thing.
Yeah, no, is it because I love the way someone like Jordan talks about this stuff, but I've spent the last like 2 years trying to like
articulate,
try and put what he's talking about in a less, and I'm going to use a word here, and I don't mean it as mean as it sounds, but in a less kind of wushu way. Do you know? I'm like, I want to know, because what he's talking about, if he's going to claim that what he's talking about is like fucking real stuff, it's like, well, if it's real, we have to be able to explain it, and we have to be able to explain it in ways that don't invoke, fucking myths that were written 2,000 years ago. We should be able to explain it in language that makes sense today. Do you know?
Yeah, and more practical applications as well.
Yeah.
The Bible doesn't really have anything that is actionable intelligence today.
Hey. No,
it's slightly difficult to follow the laws of Leviticus now. There was a guy who did that. He followed all the commandments in the Bible, and he looked like a complete lunatic because he ended up with a terrorist beard over here and so
it's not surprising. I mean, especially in today's world. But there was
the guy looked like a terrorist.
There was another universal rule, or I guess another meta thing I wanted to kind of articulate. And how should I say this? It's the way we come up with solutions. So for example, damn, I had an example here. Let me think. What did I say? Healthcare. Sure, let me just go with healthcare. When we try to come up with solutions, we have an ideal. Hey, here's the right way to do things. But then the second question is, well, what do we do to get there? And I think when people talk about problems that just we face in everyday life, sometimes we conflate the two between what's the ideal and how to get there. Because the way we get there is not done perfectly. So for example, and it's just, I want to be careful on what we incentivize, what's our goal. So for example is the idea of a cure. A cure is usually, just broadly speaking, is meant for a disease. There's something to actually cure. So you shouldn't want to incentivize cures in a way, because one corrupt form of that is, we cured everything. Let me come up with a disease just so I can say I got another cure.
Yeah. And
so it's along those lines.
If you're promoting final solutions, well, what's the problem, right? So, in history, there have been a lot of solutions to problems that we go, no, that's not a problem, today. And so,
and another example is forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that's admirable. But what I don't want to do is there's a special way to phrase it, but loosely, you don't want to put it on a pedestal. Again, for example, let's say if Danny was here, I'll ask Danny, hey, did you forgive someone today? Because that's an admirable thing to do. And he says no. It's let me help you with that. Let me punch your face and apologize. So now you can forgive me.
Yeah. You don't actually have to. You don't actually have to receive an apology to forgive someone. That's You know, sometimes you do something and they don't realize that it may have really hurt you. Or, you know, there's also you know, forgiveness does not mean you've forgotten. Just because you forgive your girlfriend for having had an affair doesn't mean you're going to forget it and say, "Oh, let's get back together."
Yeah.
It could be a case of, okay, well, I do truly forgive you, but I
don't want to be with you.
We do not have an aligned set of morals. We are going to part ways. So forgiveness and forgetness is not the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Like the point was, you're right, and it doesn't. Forgiveness, I would say, is not dependent on an apology, like you said. But the point is that you don't want to start inflicting pain or wrongdoings just to obtain more forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of one of the weird things about Catholicism is you're always seeking forgiveness for having been born. It's you know, original sin, and you know, they're always seeking God's forgiveness, and it's like, at what point, you know, what would you do if you got the forgiveness? Like, right? What then? Right? Your whole practice, your whole ideology is based on you know, seeking forgiveness. Well, if you've got it, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do next? Go and commit some horrific crime to apologize for? I don't know. Like, no, it's yeah. I mean, you know, people always say I'm quite a forgiving person. Doesn't mean I forget.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I forget. It doesn't mean I'm going to trust people who don't deserve it. But yeah, you know, with forgiveness, it's like you do need to forgive people for not being perfect, because otherwise you're going to have a very, very angry life. You're going to spend your life very angry. So yeah, and like, so what your original question is do we idealize the idea, or do we idealize the pathway to that idea?
So it's like sometimes we conflate the two. So for example, damn, I had one. I didn't write it down.
That'll teach you.
Yeah, I know. So okay, like cancel culture, right?
Okay.
That can lead. We talk. You know, this is like become an obvious topic. That could go too far. You need to provide a way for redemption, right? And you can kind of, it's crazy, like you said before, George, it's kind of religious. It's like original sin. You messed up, so now you're damned to hell. But you need redemption, though.
But it's okay, you make your point first, George, because I'm kind of cutting in. Because I was actually listening, I just wasn't like at the computer.
Yeah, this one. It's just like NASCAR for many years since the early 2000s has had the NASCAR Road to Redemption. And it started off for Shane Neal. I think that was his name, Shane Neal or whatever his name. He was caught with marijuana in his system. And now that was a big stink in NASCAR, and he lost sponsorship, and he lost a drive. And when he got back into the sport, they started this Road to Redemption for him. And the idea was that he would do more blood tests. He would do, you know, like a whole bunch of alcohol, I don't know, drug anonymous, whatever, like anti-drug stuff. And then when they found him with drugs again, they were like, okay, get out. But the NASCAR Road to Redemption is now for guys like Kyle Larson, who said the N-word. It's like, no, he wasn't calling anybody a name. He said, oh, my microphone doesn't work. Guess I can say, you know. So, and now it's like, you know, he had to go to Minneapolis. He had to go and meet Black Lives Matter. He had to go to all these things. And it's like Soviet-style re-education. And I don't know, that whole road to redemption that NASCAR has made, it just seems like such indoctrination to me. It's
it can go too far. Yeah, same thing. It can go too far as well.
And like now you got Kyle Larson sitting there on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that. Like, it's like, oh my god, dude, you're a NASCAR driver. Give them one finger salute and move on. Like, you're a NASCAR driver. Come on, you're supposed to be a badass.
Yeah, and so like here's a more extreme example, just to like make it blatant. Let's
Yeah.
say like lying's not a good thing, and let's say the government made lying illegal. I think most people are gonna fail at that. Now, on one hand, the ideal is, people should be perfect, right? Obviously, we don't value being wrong or being evil. But the problem is no one's perfect. So again, it's almost like religious. You don't want to damn people to hell. It's like, what's the next step forward? We need a form of correction. We need to improve.
Yeah, you've nailed it with that last bit. That last bit is bang on.
So that's my point. It's just sometimes this is where we conflate the two. We have the ideal, but the path we provide for people, we can't expect the path to be perfect. It just needs to be improved.
So I don't think we have the ideal ever. All we have is the path. And our path needs to have a bunch of people stationed along it that kind of shove you in the right direction whenever you make a mistake.
Okay.
Like, so so the minute you admit that people are fallible, that people make mistakes, that we don't have access to final or certain truth or some kind of final solution, the minute you admit that, then you have to admit that you're never done. You're never finished. You never have the answer to anything. All you've got is tentative solutions. And what becomes really important is if you're never done, then what you need is a process. And you need a process that includes a means of redemption or of error correction or whatever it is you want to call it. It's this thing of, right, we're going to fucking make mistakes, guys. And we're always going to make mistakes. And we're never going to reach a point where there are people who don't make mistakes. And so what we need is to admit that mistakes are inevitable, but that mistakes are fixable, or at least that we can try and fix them. And we can be wrong sometimes. So we could think that we've solved a problem or something, and we actually haven't,
Yeah.
But I think that this idea of an ideal or of anything like that is actually really, that is the evil thing. That is the pernicious thing. Because if you really think about it, imagine you're somebody and you really think you've come upon an ideal. Okay. You think you have a way of being a solution to a certain problem, and it is the solution, right? It absolutely makes sense if you think you've got that, for you to want everybody else to fuck off and leave you and just get out of your way and let you do what you want to do. And if they get in your way, they're wrong. Because if you're obviously right, if you're obviously pursuing an ideal, then they're obviously wrong. And something needs to be done about them to stop them from stopping you.
That justify all sorts of evils.
Yes.
And sorry to butt in here, but like your idea of people pushing you toward the right path and that being the road to redemption sort of thing.
I used the word people there, but I didn't literally mean.
Oh yeah.
Get on the road path.
Yeah, you sort of on the right path, and you
some kind of
road to redemption through it. The problem, I think, with cancel culture is if you're just a little bit too right wing, if you're a little bit too this, you're gone. You're outcast forever. It's like those guys get together, they find their own new path, and it ain't the one you like.
But it's if you look at things this way, it becomes no surprise when people like the cancel culture people, they're always so certain, they're always so fucking sure that they're right. And like it's because this kind of behavior falls right out of certainty. Do you know? Like if you are sure that, because I mean, I'm just trying to put yourself in their shoes. Like if you thought that you had some really fucking good ideas about how to behave and what makes a good person and how to produce a certain political kind of system, and how to have the right kind of culture where nobody ever gets offended and everybody loves each other, if you were really, really, really sure that that was the right way to go, you'd be all over cancel culture. You'd be like, man, fuck these bigots. You know, like, but that's what certainty does. That's what a lack of taking fallibility seriously does. It makes you act like an asshole.
So just to like take a step back real quick. I feel like there might be two things happening here. First, because I feel like this might become a tangent. So, because you said, Danny, that there is no ideal or something like that.
We can never know it.
We can never know.
We can never know what the ideal is. No one ever will.
But there might be an ideal that exists. We just don't know
it. Yeah. So in the same way that there really is a truth of the matter when it comes to like the laws of physics, but that doesn't mean we'll ever know it.
No, but
we'll always only ever have approximations to it.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Just want to clarify that. Yeah, because that's my thing. It's that even if people claim, even if people claim they do know the ideal, let's say cancel culture, racism is wrong. Let's say you have a moral law that you believe is true.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that even if you believe that, you have to accept that no one's perfect. Let's say, play a stereotype, the white savior, and they accuse another white person, hey man, what you said is racist, so canceled. And it's like, what? You think they should die? Is it worth the death penalty? No, they need to have a way of redemption. And obviously the white savior, I'm putting a stereotype, makes the accusation. They need to acknowledge they themselves are not perfect. Because if you weren't, then you kill yourself. So it's like, my point is, even if you believe in an ideal, you also have to take into account a redemptive process, a correction, in which the process itself doesn't require perfection.
Well, yeah, but it's without even going as far as death. Like, let's just take the racism thing, right? So let's say you were absolutely fucking sure that your idea of racism of what racism was and its effects were right. Let's say you were really fucking sure about that. Like, there isn't really any reason to let somebody do something then that you think is racist. Because you're fucking convinced, man. Like, you're convinced that racism is A, B, and C, and the effects of racism are da 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 da, and these are all undeniably and unarguably bad things. And it's like, if that really is what you think, there isn't a reason to let somebody that you think is racist talk. There just isn't. Whereas the only way that you can. So I'm obviously convinced that racism is bad, etc., etc., etc. But the only reason the only explanation that I would have for letting a clan member speak his mind is that I have to actually admit, well, I might be wrong. I genuinely might be wrong. There might be some kind of truth to racist ideas. Because if you are convinced that there isn't, if you're just like, do you know what? I'm sorry, I don't say convinced. If you're certain that there isn't, then you don't have a reason to let anybody who is racist speak their mind. Because, like, why bother? You're already certain, man. You're already sure that you're right, and they're definitely wrong. So
and that's why I push it to the extreme, like death. Like, where's your moral line then? Like, what do you allow?
Well, it's just like, because I totally get what you're saying there, but it's just like, you don't even need to go to death. It's like, if you're certain, you don't have a reason to let them fucking talk. You just don't. And it's like this idea that it is possible to be certain about ideas, and that, like, it inexorably leads to authoritarianism politically. It's unavoidable. It is only if you take the notion of people being fallible really, really seriously that you might be wrong about anything, then you get ideas of tolerance and openness to criticism and letting people say what they think and you being open to listen to it and stuff like that. And like all of that only falls out of and taking fallibilism like really seriously. So what you're saying about like a process versus like an ideal, it's like you should be very, very wary of people who think that they've discovered an ideal. You should be very wary of them because that person is almost always going to turn into a tyrant.
Like a fundamentalist, like of religion. That's an example of that.
Yeah. And you're muted, I think, George. Or no, never mind.
Cult leaders are very much like that. They've got certainty, and the more counter it runs to the country they're in, generally that leads to the body count. I mean, look at Jonestown. They have that certainty, and again, that's quite appealing to a lot of people because, like, healthcare workers in Africa, they say, "Oh no, please use condoms," whatever. And they say they can prevent AIDS, they can do this, they can prevent pregnancy if used correctly. But then the Pope visits and says, "No, they absolutely do," and it's like to people who are educated, it's like, well, this guy seems pretty certain, and you seem like an idiot.
Yes.
Unfortunately, ideas like the Catholic Church promote in Africa, like condoms cause AIDS. Very difficult to fight because we go along, doctors go along and they say, no, condoms can prevent AIDS. You still can because if you don't use it properly and whatnot, you don't sound appealing to people. Whereas
well, the thing is that in the right kind of culture, it actually is very appealing. So in our culture, in American culture and in British culture, and I would say that Irish culture is pretty much just an extension of British culture. But it's like that kind of attitude actually is kind of appealing. Like people don't like someone who sounds like a fucking tyrant, right? Now, there are more subtle and deceptive ways of being a tyrant that you can dress it up. And cancel culture is one of those examples where it really is tyranny just dressed up, but this... I think that this is one of the because again, it's one of these simple sounding statements. Well, we're fallible. We can make mistakes. It's like, well, duh, everybody fucking thinks that, right? But it's only if you really, really take that seriously, then you get it. Then you can make sense of morals that our societies have. Our societies have morals about being open, being critical, being tolerant of different things. It's like all of that only makes sense if people are fallible. If it's possible for even one person to not be fallible, if you could have that one true leader, that supreme leader that has grokked the right answer on something, then it makes total sense that the cultures that get that idea into their head, that you can have someone like Hitler, that he's grokked the truth on some limited set of questions, or maybe even all questions, and he's not fallible. Suddenly they are willing to give over all of their freedoms to him, because you absolutely would. If you really thought that somebody had found the truth, then it absolutely makes loads of sense to just do what that person says and get out of their way.
The current cultures in the world like that today are North Korea and China.
Yeah.
The dear leader, he knows all. And it's like, if you question him, you die. Everyone around. I mean, one of the alarming things in North Korea is once a week, every workplace, you have to condemn yourself. Oh, I didn't do this right. The leader would have done, I'm so terrible. And so even the thought of escaping is impossible for people to comprehend.
Yeah.
So they can't think about leaving. They can't think about revolting. They certainly can't talk about it.
Yeah. and it makes them debase themselves. It makes them demoralize themselves. You know.
Yeah, like the interesting thing is, like you referenced Hitler's coming to power. The Weimar Republic, Germany never really had a democracy. It had the Kaiser in World War One. What was interesting is, the Weimar Republic, they voted for a president for 10 years, Paul von Hindenburg. He was the president, and they had this proportional representation system and a lot of voting, but people didn't vote. They didn't want to vote. They wanted the Kaiser. They wanted a leader. And when Hitler became chancellor, and when Paul von Hindenburg died, he became chancellor and president, renamed the position the Führer, the leader. People fell in line. They wanted a leader. They did not want to be voting. They didn't want a democratic system because they'd always had a man who had the answer.
Yeah,
it's the interwar period in Germany is so interesting. There was gunfights in the streets of Berlin between the different political parties, and hardly anybody ever voted. And then once they got a leader, people fell in behind him.
So, like, one thing, again, like I agree with everything we've been saying, but just to go back a bit, like the reason why I brought this up, and I think it's better understood now, so we're kind of fleshed it out. There's like the ideal. Well, let me rephrase that. There's like maybe an ideal structure, but then there's
a goal.
There's a goal, but then there's also the process to get to that goal, and maybe there is, let's say, a perfect way to do that process, but you shouldn't, for lack of better words, you shouldn't implement that on people, or you shouldn't expect it from people, something like that, because they're not going to do it perfectly. It's going to be an improvement thing.
Yeah, like you shouldn't entrench that on people. You need to, like, so you whatever your idea about the process, about arriving at whatever goal is, it's like that process itself needs to be open to criticism, to improvement, to revision. You shouldn't entrench anything, because the minute you entrench something, because we are fallible, the minute you entrench something, you are entrenching the mistakes that are in it.
But here's an example. Let's say I'm going to play like devil's advocate against this. 1960s, racism is bad in America.
Yeah.
Obviously racism is bad. And let's say, racism is bad. That's an ideal. Okay. How about a process? Well, let's say when people are working at their jobs, they shouldn't be racist. And we can map that to, okay, as they're working, this process, not being racist might be an ideal process. But the reality is, a lot of people in this nation at that time are going to be somewhat racist. So what do you do? Do you fire them if they are a little bit racist, or do you allow them to improve?
So the thing to remember is, because all of this is about problems in my head, right? So in reality, I think in the 60s in America, and I'm not a history buff, right? But what really got the civil rights movement off the ground was the kind of the manifestation of certain kinds of problems in Black people's lives. And in particular, there was a broader problem that Martin Luther King really highlighted, which is, well, we have a big fucking problem here, guys, because we're apparently citizens, but we're not full citizens, and I don't see why we're not full citizens. Like, unless you can show me what is so fucking different about you guys and us guys, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be citizens the same as you, right? So there's this focus on real, tangible problems, right? Whether those are big picture in terms of nationwide, or just problems just like, so around the 60s, obviously the Vietnam War, and there was the fact that like a lot of the people who were getting conscripted were poor people, and most of them were Black.
Exactly.
So there was more, what would you say, parochial kind of problems there as well that kind of exacerbated the issue and the tensions.
So here's like a specific one. Let's say like at our time in this area, we had like white restrooms and colored restrooms.
Yeah.
Here's what my question would be. Because would it be smart to say, hey, let's remove the colored and white restrooms, let's just make them regular restrooms?
Yeah.
Or should we incrementally implement that idea?
Well, no. So what you do is that, because I don't want to get too hung up on the word ideal and stuff here, right? So all I mean by the word ideal is just a final solution. We reach that and we're fucking done.
Yeah.
So to your problem of, let's say, segregation broadly in America, it's like what happened there was people pointed out real problems that they had with that fucking policy, and they pursued a solution to that problem. And this is one of the key things about the civil rights movement, through an error correcting means. They were like, we want to take part in the democratic process. We want to peacefully protest. We want to put kind of develop grassroots movements and put political pressure on people and do kind of wheeling and dealing and deal making with LBJ. And it's not that everybody in that movement was certain that if they could just solve these problems that they would live in an ideal America. But it was just, look, these are problems. We think we've got a fucking solution. Like, there's no reason why you can't like have like non-segregated restrooms or water fountains.
Yeah.
Like, what argument do you have for not letting that happen? And it's not that they were like, it's not that they were sitting there going, we are dogmatically fucking certain that what we are suggesting to you is fucking amazing. It's just that we're putting forward to you the fact that we think there's a problem here. Here's our solution. Do you have any fucking argument against this solution? So it could have happened. It could have happened that there was things wrong. So they might have put forward an idea that didn't work so well. Maybe it fucking inflamed racial tension in some way or whatever, and they would have had to revisit it. They would have had to come up with a new idea.
My question to you, Danny, is like, I agree with what you're saying. Obviously, I'm not in support of like segregated restrooms and water fountains.
Yeah.
But because my response would be, what if like there was a committee of white people and we're like, you know what? We agree. That's not the final solution. We don't think it should be the final solution. But because we don't want to implement a perfect process, and because we don't want to set these high expectations and allow for self-correction, we're only going to remove these restrooms a few at a time instead of all at once.
Well, like, they could have done that, and that would, I think what you would say is there would be an argument as to, well, what is it that you think that kind of implementing those increments? It's like you would make an argument as to, well, what exactly is that increments achieving?
It's allowing people to like grow and grow accustomed, just like cancel culture. It's allowing people to redeem themselves incrementally.
Well, like if they said that, like, I mean, I don't know. It would depend then at the time if the people at that time were okay with that or not okay with that. And the people at that time would have to have those arguments, Mm-hmm. But the important thing is that it's not about getting it right. It's about fixing the things that you get wrong. Mm. And I know that sounds like this obvious thing, but our political process is not at all. It's really fucking shit at getting things right, to be completely honest, because all political systems are terrible at getting things right because we don't know what's right.
And I see what you mean. I see what you're doing. It's like the process of elimination of wrong ideas.
Yes. So it is entirely possible that America, if you rewound the clock, someone might have put forward that idea. Well, maybe we should be a little bit more incremental here, give people time to adjust, And I don't know. It's possible. Maybe there are parts of America where that actually would have been a good idea. I don't know.
As opposed to just removing it all at once.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a history buff, so I wouldn't make a claim. But I just mean that I can imagine it being plausible that that if someone was concerned about really inflaming racial tension, like, if you've got a lot of fucking clan members in your state, like, I can imagine that being a real concern, and I don't know, maybe it would be reasonable to say, like, we gotta be slow and incremental about this, because if we don't, there's gonna be fucking neighborhoods burnt down, like that seems like I don't want to say that was reasonable in the past, because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I could imagine a scenario where that could be plausibly reasonable,
Yeah, and I hate doing this. Like, this is not me defending clan members at all.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
But it's just I'm playing this
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I'm doing this to play that devil's advocate, because you can apply this to so many things today with like cancel culture. And it's kind of fucked up, because there's the part we have to acknowledge. Like, we have to acknowledge, fine, it's fucked up. People are doing bad things. But it's weird. It's just weird to say, in a way, you have to let them keep doing bad things at a lower frequency.
Yeah.
A lot of clan members leave the clan. And this is one thing, like today. A lot of these Vice journalists and all these different Lad Bible journalists, they go to the clan members, and like 6 months later, these guys have left the clan. And you have to, like, again, Danny says, Danny's point is perfect. It's you have to let people make mistakes and understand people are fallible for them to resolve the issues. I mean, they were clan members, and now they've left the clan. A lot of people do leave the clan.
Well, yeah, because there's it's no surprise that in a broader culture like what's in America, which is really focused on error correction, it's all about just, okay, everybody, like, so it's all about letting people be free and be tolerant and stuff, because nobody really knows what's right. Nobody has the fucking final answer. So we're all just gonna mix together in this complicated fucking pot, and you're gonna do what you want, and I'm gonna do what I want, and we're both going to make mistakes. And hopefully, if we all just make mistakes together in this right kind of culture where we're all kind of open to each other's mistakes, we can get somewhere. And it's no surprise then that you can have a subculture which is unbelievably racist, like the clan. And it's no surprise that such a subculture is bleeding members in a broader culture of error correction. Whereas in a broader culture that is not interested in error correction, such a subculture could even thrive. It's not just that it could survive.
Yes.
It's like
it's overcorrecting.
Yes, like a subculture that is filled with mistakes is going to struggle to survive in a broader culture of correcting mistakes.
Exactly. So these are my two things. Is first, it's that it's like a hard pill to swallow. It's weird to convey. We have to convey to, let's say, the left, or let's say, loosely speaking, the higher moral group of people. It's like, hey, higher moral group of people, you have to allow the people fucking up to fuck up more, even if it's racist, but a little less. And when we talk about the increments, that's very subjective, very contextual. Like, what are those increments exactly? That's again, it's relative, but we have to acknowledge that the increments have to exist. And not just that. The second point is that, I know you like this, and you kind of tied this in before. It's an error correction. It's an incremental improvement. It's also Darwinian, and it's like you said. I don't think it's just American thing or a race thing. It's a reality thing. It's like it's an aspect of reality itself that kind of funnels in.
It's a fundamental law of nature about exactly how you can have refined information. How you can go about adapting information to a certain purpose, and it's like people Karl Popper, like this all comes from Popper, by the way. This isn't original to me, but it's like Popper talked about how a rationalist would rather fail to persuade you and not get his own way than force his own way upon you. You know, and like that is an idea that is buried very deep in American and British culture in particular. I don't think any other countries in the world have that idea as deeply ingrained in their culture.
Okay, and then like to just because this is the kind of the cool part. This is what I think people like JP and IDW like these conversations. You find the patterns because JP makes the argument. You see this in Christianity. I think it maybe other religions and cultures it varies, but as far as Christianity, that's because that's what he's most familiar with. As am I most familiar with. You see, 'cause Jordan looks at religion, and you know some people look at religion also as a tool and how the religion evolves. And let's say the amount of autocorrectness within a culture / religion. And like you kind of see that in the Bible as well, how it evolves. And it's crazy. Yeah. It's that deep. It's like it emerges and it keeps emerging out. And
the word emerges is the right word.
Yeah. And I would push a little further. I feel like you said, just because it's fun, you said it's like a law of nature. I want to push a little bit deeper. I would say it's deeper than, because it's like, in nature you have like gravity and stuff, but I say it's deeper than nature. It's completely in the abstract. It's a law of reality.
Yeah, it's not a law of physics, but it's a law of nature. It's a law of like, the universe.
Yeah.
Which is more than just physics.
Yeah.
I've got to get going.
No, this was good. Yeah.
Sorry, it's good conversation. Nice talking to everyone, but I've got to get going. So see you guys next week.
All right, man.
Definitely.
I'll
post this up.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Did you just say there? Are you heading or?
No, I mean I can talk for a little bit more.
Yeah, I got maybe like 15 or 20 minutes.
All right. Yeah, it was I think it was 2 weeks ago we did our own thing. I just found it funny listening to it again. You started off with 40 minutes, 2 hours.
No. Yeah, well, that was a different story. Like, but no, but this these fundamental, and I know you said you got Deutsch's book and that, like, as in, but this stuff about error correcting to solve problems is this really fundamental law of reality. Like, it's mind-boggling. Like, I'm still reeling sometimes from. I go back and I read some of that shit, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And Jordan, this is again, I said it to you before. The coolest shit about Jordan is that he arrives at so many amazing conclusions, but the path he takes to get there is just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, and actually, let me see, because I had something up. It was, because I wanted to say it's like, let's say here's like reality and all this abstraction up here, and we have, let's say, what we perceive down here. Everything's like sort of, for lack of a better word, it's grounded. And I think this is why you see people that are experts in their field. Let's say like Jordan, what he's doing, he's like starting to touch on it. It's because you start to go more and more meta. It's like an upside down tree. Everyone who really starts understanding their particular field, they start finding the patterns in their field, and then the meta patterns. And they eventually they can't help but start to overlap and start to converge into this reality thing.
Yeah. So it's weird because somebody like Jordan, right? Jordan is somebody who is super interested in going as deep as possible on an idea. But at the same time, Jordan is very narrowly focused on psychology, right? And so what he ends up with is he goes super deep just on psychology, and he seems to kind of somehow arrive at these very deep conclusions. But those conclusions don't make any sense. You can't explain them without reference to other fields other than psychology.
Because they're all tied together.
Yeah, so what he does is he just fucking ignores all the other fields and he tries to explain these deep truths just with psychology. And that is what leads to his arguments sometimes being all like mad. But his idea of order and chaos, you know, being quote unquote with a capital B is all about order and chaos. That's right. But what he's describing is actually information theory and the fact that information can impose a structure on the chaos. So what I mean is that human beings can impose an order on chaos using information.
Yeah, I'm following you. I would say, because I see Jordan, he tends to stay in that psychological route, but I think he does that intentionally because he's like, look, this is where my expertise is in. And he says that before. He says other things like, I don't want to go there because I'm not an expert. So this is where my credibility is. So I'll work my way up through here because this is where my expertise is.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable, but it's limited.
Yeah,
you know, it's really, and I think it's a real shame because I think Jordan is a fucking genius, but he's hamstrung himself. You know, like I think that Jordan could well be one of the fucking smartest people on the planet, but he has just put shackles on his own mind by refusing to think that he might be able to make sense of fields that he doesn't have a PhD in.
I think, and hopefully he's starting to, because like in Maps of Meaning, psychology does overlap because he talks about the neuroscience and he sees like the patterns of reality and he's trying to make the analogies.
He needs to go further, man. He needs to go. He needs to just like. He needs to be like, right, I'm going to go into computation because the brain is a computer, and I'm going to go into fucking physics because, you know, and I'm going to go into epistemology and all this kind of stuff. He needs to do all of that.
And that's why I enjoy the IDW, and that's why when Brett would talk to Jordan and Brett would bring in evolutionary biology, you see the patterns, the parallels. It's like, oh my God.
Exactly. You know, and it's like, I want Jordan to fucking talk to Richard Dawkins, man. I'm so like, because I get triggered listening to Jordan talk about evolution. I'm not gonna lie, I get totally triggered. I get triggered listening to Brett talk about evolution.
I remember you mentioned this.
But it's like I just want him to do it because it pisses me off, man. It pisses me off so much, you know, because I think that Jordan has the kind of mind that could make he could come up with some if he can come up with the conclusions that he has based on one fucking field. I'm like, what could this man do?
I mean, and he spent like this is like his life's work.
Yeah,
so
it's like what surprising. Could he do? Yeah, if he broadened his horizons, what would this man be capable of coming up with? Like Jesus.
Let's say, and then one thing I'll bring up with you, and I doubt we'll finish this today, but you know, it's awesome because I mentioned this before. Because I mean, not only Jordan, definitely not only myself. Like I'm nowhere near. I'm still young. Like there's other people that are also like finding these patterns and trying to understand it. And I've gone a bit further than just what we've spoken. I think last time we spoke, I kind of introduced like this idea. So okay, that's why earlier today I mentioned there's like chaos and order, but there's a certain other. There's these relationships, but then there's a structure with these relationships. And one was like naivety, resentment, and then you become like brave. It's like it's meaningful. So that's like layered. And there's like a structure with that also. And I was trying to determine the structure between the hypothetical, remember, functionality, longevity, because there's a relationship between those. And the more I'm not saying it's linear. It might be exponential. I don't know what it is, but there's something definitely there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, maybe yeah. So power, life. I'm hesitant with that because semantics of wording is really important. But I want to lean into morality, and I feel like it all overlaps.
Oh, oh man, it fucking does. Oh, it overlaps so much.
So
Like
it's
you.
so what's interesting is Jordan. Let me just start with this. He looks at it from a historical perspective, like he always does. It maps the meaning and the way people back then, because they didn't view the world through science. They tried to view the world like this through like a being sense, and they
Yeah.
would categorize things as I'm speaking loosely as like good or bad, and that's
Yeah.
why nowadays our language, like through the lens we see it, it made sense. Like we say, oh, this one is good or this one is bad, but what do you mean by bad? Like if I say this knife is bad, it's because this knife isn't sharp enough or it's broken.
Yeah.
Bad is like a broad term that you need to like specify, not be specific. When it comes to morality, and we spoke about this, and I completely agree. What was it? There was deduction and injunction.
Yeah. So I listened back to that, and like there's all kinds of things that I wasn't massively happy with the way I kind of put it. But okay. Yeah.
But this is fine because this is us refining our speech as well and our
Yeah.
getting better at it.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I forgot the philosopher's name, but just the idea, you'll have like you'll have to like infinitely support the premise of that premise of that premise and
Yes.
so forth.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
why
Yes.
there is deduction though, and for me, it's one jump that I'm hesitant because it's a really important jump is like with morality. Well, one thing we know is like truth. You should strive for truth.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of, and it was like two sides of the coin. We said it last time. For you is like I forgot the phrasing, but it's kind of like the process of wrong ideas, of eliminating wrong ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other side of the coin is consistency. It's being consistently
Yeah.
true.
So the thing about it is that I am a realist in every sense. So I think that there is a real physical world. I think that morals are real in the same way. I think that aesthetics and beauty are real in that same way. So I think you can objectively say when one piece of art is better than another. I think that there is I'm a realist in terms of music, and that's I think that it's objectively the case when one piece of music is better than another, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But the reason I am a realist in all of these senses, in all of these areas, is the boundaries between them don't exist in reality. Reality is just one thing, whatever way it is, right?
Yeah.
It consists of what it consists of. And we can see hints of that when try and so let's take the famous one, morality versus science, right? Seems like it's well, science deals in facts, morality deals in values. These are not the same thing, right? And it's like, yeah, but try and do science without values of tolerance and openness to criticism and this idea that everybody's opinion should be heard, etc., etc. You can't do science. So you can't get to any fact without adopting certain specific moral values. And it's more than that, then what we realize is that as we discover more and more facts about the world, the facts that we discover actually align a lot of the time with our values. So we think racism is wrong. And it turns out that when we understand things about the brain and about softwares and about people and that, it turns out people are softwares and they have nothing to do with their physical form. So racism doesn't make any sense because you having black skin says nothing about you, you know? And it's like, so this, at the fundamental level, none of these distinctions between fields really exist. We just use them as kinds of ways of compartmentalizing ideas that are kind of practically useful, you know? But this link between morality and aesthetics and science and philosophy and mathematics, and that
there.
It's there. It's so,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's really profound. That is what gives our ideas reach.
Yeah.
That is what allows Jordan, who's focusing on nothing but psychology, to arrive at conclusions that have implications for other fields.
Yeah, and this is something like I mentioned to. There's like a local Orlando group apparently with Jordan Peterson fans, and talk to them because Jordan says something along the lines of, "Free speech is the mechanism for us to correct, let's say, society." But I would say an even deeper one, and he touches on it, is not, it's hard to tell the truth. You don't know it's truth, but you know at least when you're lying. Like, don't be deceiving in a way. And to me, it's like, that's a mechanism for improvement. That's an error correction mechanism for yourself that propagates out as well.
Yeah. I think that Jordan is fucking bang on the money when he talks about the free speech thing, but he stops there, and that's a mistake.
Yeah.
He stops there. All of our values are error correcting mechanisms, all of them. At least all good ones, all true ones are error correcting ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because now that is to say, they are all error correcting if Popper's epistemology, which involves fallibilism and stuff like that. So if it is true that we are fallible, then all true morals would have to be ones that promote error correction.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know I saw your kind of look there. You're like, wait, what? And is it like this? That's what I mean. This is all linked.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So the true and good morals have to agree with our true ideas about knowledge and epistemology, which have to agree with our true ideas about what's physically possible and impossible, etc. So this ties into physics and all this kind of stuff. When Jordan talks about free speech as a mechanism, it's like, yeah, but voting is a mechanism for error correction. Political parties are a mechanism for error correction because, so for example, if you, I don't know what America is like because America is so big, right? But if you have in Britain, right, you've got constituencies, right? So you have voting districts, I think is what Americans call them. So you got a constituency and you have one representative in government, in the House of Representatives, right? And if there was no political parties, right? So imagine you've got people who want to be elected in your constituency, right? So two of them, let's say, they stand up and they say, well, I'll do A, B, and C. And then another guy says, I'll do D and F. But there's no political parties. There's no mechanism for that. So so one of them gets elected. Let's say it's the first guy, and he goes to Parliament, and he doesn't get anything done because it's just him. And there's 200 other guys, and they've got their own ideas about what they want. And so he comes back to you and he says, well, what do you want me to do? I'm just one guy. There's 199 other people. But now imagine you have political parties. So your guy can join a party, and what he does is he puts forward the manifesto of the party. And now he essentially goes, well, I'm going to do not necessarily A, B, and C, which is 100% what I think, but I'm going to do kind of like variations of that. And this party supports those variations. So I'm going to put that forward if you elect me. Mm-hmm. And so then he goes to Parliament. And now instead of him just having the voting power of just him, he has the voting power of his entire party. So 50 members of the Parliament as a bloc will now try and pursue whatever he promised his constituents.
Yeah.
And so his accountability has gone way up. So he is now, when he goes back to his constituents, and let's say he fails, right? He no longer has the excuse of, well, what did you want from me? I'm just one guy, right? Because his constituents can now say, yeah, well, you're not just one guy. You're part of that party, and that party promised me A, B, and C, and you didn't fucking deliver. So screw you. I'm voting for the other guy who's part of another party.
Error correct.
So, error correcting. Yeah, and so that's what parties do, and it's everything in our society is fucking error correcting, and it's an amazing thing that all of this stuff works in the background, even though most of the people in our culture don't realize that that's what's happening.
Yeah. So like where I'm at right now, because I've been thinking about all this stuff like this for a while, and the point I'm at right now is like trying to tie in morality. And to me, the reason why, is stealing wrong in some conditions, is killing wrong in some conditions, but something I can start with is consistency. It's like the ultimate, something that's ultimately consistent, or something that's completely devoid of any, what's the word, like imperfections in thought, like the process of elimination. What if the process is complete? So it's just truth. So it's like, okay, it's truth. So I feel like truth is moral. So saying truth must be one of like the most fundamental moral things. Acting truthfully must be one of the most fundamental moral things. The only thing that sucks is that this is one of those things that where this is a perfect, let's say a perfect process, but it gets weird to implement. For example, if someone wants to kill me and he walks up to me, hey, are you Frank? And you shoot him. Now I'm John.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say the truth there.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's not because I'm initiating, let's say, an error thing. It's in defense. Just like killing is wrong, but it's in defense of life.
I think there's lots of mistakes that are common, like the idea that, well, stealing is wrong, right? You don't need to have axioms about stealing being wrong and stuff like that. Stealing being wrong can be a conclusion, and it can be a conclusion just based on, well, rationally, if I am going to be okay with theft for one person, so it's okay to steal from that guy in certain circumstances, then rationally, unless you can say that you have a different kind of, there's something different about you as a person, then it becomes, by defending someone stealing from him, you are defending someone who would do the same thing to you.
And even then, like, for me, stealing is still it's not fundamental enough compared to, like, saying the truth. Like, I don't know if you get more fundamental than that, or at least acting in truth, or acting in a way that you believe you're not deceiving.
Yeah. So I think it's true that if you are saying things which are true, you shouldn't have to lie ever. So if you are dealing in truth, then there is never going to be any need to lie or to do anything. Do you know what I mean? It's the like so people people like to talk about I don't know. So like Jordan, right? So he talks about fucking the reason why in Western society people are treated with certain kinds of goodness and certain like basic levels of respect, and that it's something to do with this divine spark that they have, or it's like, they're made in the image of God or whatever it is, and it's this fundamental, as he would say, axiomatic principle that people have this kind of innate value. And it's like, no, you don't need to start with that uncriticizable value. All you need to say is, well, okay, if it's okay to stab that guy over there sometimes, yes, I think that I possess some kind of property that guy doesn't. Then by defending stabbing of him in those circumstances, I am defending rationally the stabbing of me. Now, most people automatically go, hell no, no way. I don't want to be stabbed. And so, but the rational thing then is, and this is open to criticism, I might be wrong here, right? But the rational thing then is, well, then, okay, you have a case to answer for then, why is it okay to stab him and not you? If there's nothing different about you, to him, then what's the argument?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no like this whole picture that Jordan tried, or not picture, but this whole way of thinking about ideas that Jordan has, which is that you have to have these axioms, and these axioms need to be entrenched as dogmas, and then you build from there. So people are these innately valuable things, and that is just something that you can't question.
Yeah.
And
So for me, what Jordan's doing, because I don't think, like, for example, we think he could go deeper. I think what he's doing, he's in the process of finding these patterns, and this is like the deepest pattern he's found so far. From a pragmatic perspective. But he's still, like you said, like he's still getting like the free speech thing, and then just keep going, keep going.
Yeah, he is, but it speaks of a certain kind of attitude that he has towards ideas, which is what he's trying to do is he is trying to find a foundation, and when he has found it, he is going to defend it.
Yeah,
and he's not gonna let this thing be criticized, man, and he'll have this thing of you criticize it at your peril, and it's like. He's gonna sit there and say, "You better be fucking careful, man, because I have found this foundation, and this foundation leads to all the things that we care about. So you be goddamn careful about criticizing this thing, because if you're successful, everything is gonna topple." And
or even better, it's like criticize it all you want, but like like nowadays, like don't remove it. You remove it at your own peril.
Yeah, so I would say that whole project is misguided. Like, you don't need to treat ideas like that. You can treat ideas rather than as this foundational set of principles that everything then gets derived from. You can treat it as this complicated web of woven guesses. And it's like none of them are foundations. None of them. None of them are these things that you derive other stuff from. It's always just we take each problem as it comes and we come up with solutions to those problems. And it makes sense that if you engage in that process for long enough, you will eventually come up with solutions that kind of have reach into other problems.
So I agree somewhat. So I get what you're saying. You're going kind of back to your approach of the process of eliminating bad ideas.
Yeah, problem, conjecture, criticism.
Yeah. Problem, conjecture, criticism. The problem is that's an amazing process. It might even be like the process, but you need to start with something. Like you need a default culture, and that's for Jordan. It's like, for now, this is the default culture, and it's like you can criticize it, but I think he would be a fan of problem, conjecture,
criticism.
There you go. But his thing is like, we all start with a default, and we know none of these defaults are perfect. But if we get rid of these default, we're gonna cause so much more trouble. So I think that's where
I love it. I fucking love it. I love how you're just fucking. I mean, I don't know how you're doing this. I'm actually super fucking impressed, because I wasn't fucking able to just come up with this because none of this says that we can ever step outside of our current knowledge base and our current tradition.
Exactly.
Like what our tradition at the moment is just all of the stuff that we think we know so far, and the problems that we find and the problems that we encounter are within the tradition.
Mm-hmm. At least pragmatically, we don't know because
So it's not that we can ever just go, well, these are all of our traditions, fuck them, none of that matters, let's just start from scratch. You can never do that, ever. Yeah. Well, you can try it. You can try and set up a communist. Yeah, you can set up a communist utopia, start a revolution, and throw out a few centuries of tradition, and you just see what happens. Like, you are going to end up with a bloodbath. Mm-hmm. And it's not an accident. And like, this is the thing, as in Jordan points this out, but I don't think he's ever really able to explain exactly why. The reason why is because by throwing all of that out, you are throwing out all of the error correction that has happened to date.
Oh, I think Jordan's aware of that. I think he's tried to convey that before. So that's
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough,
I mean, I could be wrong, but based on stuff I've heard, yeah. I love this because I think a lot of we're the only ones here right now. I think a lot of other people in the group would be interested in this. I wouldn't be surprised if we're the only ones thinking about this, but I rarely have met anyone else that goes like this deep and like into like everything being tied together. And
yeah,
like as you can see, like I could do this for hours. This is all I do. Like I'm a thinker, so I just keep playing scenarios out in my head and all that. So, but this is where I'm at. This is like where I'm gonna continue to go and try and develop more of continue to develop my deduction. It's morality's tied with everything, and it's truth. It's about truth, and now it's like build up from there. Because we can get into other deep stuff, and hopefully I'm going to talk with my communist friend, hopefully today, about like property rights and all of that.
I might make a suggestion, man, and I know this might be a little bit hard because it's a bit vague. Try to let go of the building up from there part. Try and instead focus on. Try and instead focus on. Okay, what's a problem for you? What
problem,
are two
conjecture, criticism.
Yeah. What is a problem for you? So what are two ideas or an idea that doesn't make sense to you?
So actually, I'm doing both. So I do that. So with our default political process, I come from let's say the bottom, and I try and find the process of elimination. But I'm trying to find a foundation, and I'm trying to link it, because once you link that, that's where everything just kind of explodes.
Yeah, like look, I'm not, and look, man, I kind of have to go now because I need to. This was good. This was good fun. I fucking love talking about this shit, and you might notice that I love pontificating about whatever. But no, this is good fun.
All right, yeah. Next time,
I love getting to tie it back to fucking Jordan because my relationship with him is so mixed.
I can see that.
It's so mixed, but that's cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Anytime. Till later.
See you, man.
Ooh. This is for everyone that's going to watch the video. I don't know. That's it. Take care, everybody.